Okay, my name is Kristen Aro. I'm one of the co-chairs of the Warner's Pond Task Force. And I'm calling this public meeting to order at 6:01. I'll now take a roll call of the task force members present. Vicky Alani here. Malcolm Bryant. And
I think
he's
Malcolm's
online.
online. I don't know if he has audio. Seen in the participant list.
Okay, want me to come back to him?
Sure.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Okay, I'm present.
Thank
Okay,
you,
good.
Malcolm.
Thank you.
Ann Clifford,
She has historical.
okay. Jeff Collins.
Here.
Bruce Curlis. Christine Denaro, I'm here. Keith Hannon. I don't think so.
Let's see.
Mark Howell,
Here.
Delia Kay,
Here,
Bill Kameza,
Here.
Liz Morrison Howe.
Hmm.
I know she's on her way.
She's
She's
on
on
her
her
way,
next door.
Okay.
David Owen,
Here.
Sammy Udell.
Yeah.
Jeff Quick,
Nope.
Ben Weber.
Yeah.
Okay. So our main goal tonight is to vote and approve our final task force recommendations. So you can see the agenda here on the slide. And we'll open the meeting to public comments at the end of the meeting instead of at the beginning and the end tonight. And let's see, the meeting is being recorded. And a video link will be posted to the task force website in a few days. Okay, so the minutes of May 22nd. Rachel, maybe you can help me with the story of those, the minutes of May 22nd.
we don't
Are-
have them
okay.
completed yet.
So we will,
Get them to you as soon as possible.
do we approve them at a later date
I
or?
don't know what the process is.
So I'd asked the town clerk about what tonight's meeting,
Right.
she said they could just be submitted after the meeting. So I think there are two ways, both sets could just be submitted, or,
As not approved, but just as minutes? Okay, so just as a draft, I guess.
right?
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
usually it just falls to the chairperson or something to read them through, make sure they're representative and send them into the clerk.
Okay, all right. Very good then. Okay, so Toby,
Great. All right. Thank you.
Sorry, before we go off the minutes, just, the town clerk had sent out,
yes,
an email asking for all the subcommittee minutes to be, to be submitted. And so if there are any outstanding minutes for your subcommittees, if you can, provide those as soon as you can to, meetings at Harvard at May.
okay, thank you for that.
All right. Thank you, Delia. So welcome, folks, to our final task force meeting. It has been a journey. And here we are on the precipice.
That's not a good thing.
Right, that didn't come out exactly
No.
how I intended, so.
Yeah.
Approaching the finish.
Approaching
line.
the finish line.
Yeah.
There you go. Just want to note, for the record, we have Liz Morrison Arrow, who are in attendance, has joined.
And Sammy.
And Sammy Goodell, great. So I wanted to just, begin the meeting here by just putting, the ground rules, the expectations that we, all agreed to back in meeting number 1, just as a reminder. These are, some selected ones that really relate to in the room, dialogue. Just to keep these front of mind, and make sure that we are, yeah, there's something going on with
It's just the.
the owl, yeah. But just want to remind folks, right, what kind of conversation we want to have, right? What makes for a good dialogue, especially when we're getting towards the finish line and, there are differences. We want to make sure that we are both taking space and making space. So that means looking around the room and to those of you online, like, we really want your perspective to be in here, right? So if you are concerned about something, speak up, right? Your voice matters. At the same time, be aware that there's a full group and we have an agenda and you want to make space for everyone to share. So if you're someone who's more vocal, be conscious of that. Foster a safe environment for discussions. So be honest and respectful. Obviously critical if we're going to get through this effectively as a group. Build on each other's comments and integrate across ideas. Presume good intent and attend to the impact of your actions. Also, the last big bullet there, be an effective participant. Keep our collective purpose at the center. Focus on solutions to bridge differences. So I just want to name these because I think the last meeting, there were a lot of great things that came out of it. I think we made a lot of good progress and handled some difficult issues. There were also some moments that I think we can do better, and we should do better. With that, I'm just gonna move ahead and take us to just sharing a little bit about what we did. Just reminding you all where we came from at the last meeting and how we got here, just to make sure there's clarity in the group on what's happened. So at the end of the last meeting, as you all know, we took a vote and the resolution there was that we were voting to recommend the first proposal from the alternatives report, subject to the changes and additions that had been discussed at last week's meeting, understanding that those needed to be written up and that we'd have a subsequent conversation on those details. We took the notes that we had taken from the meeting, the flip charts, and we did our best basically to take that first proposal and adapt it based on what we felt like we had heard last meeting. And we shared that right up with you all. You all then responded and gave some very helpful comments. So thank you to all of you for that. Very good, thoughtful work. We took those and we came up with another draft. Now, what's in that draft? Well, hopefully you've all read it by now. A lot of it is red lines that reflect direct suggestions that you all offered. In some cases, there wasn't a direct red line, but there was a broader request. We tried to address those, maybe coming up with some of our own language, also in red line. And in some cases, if there was a comment, but we felt like this is probably something that the task force is gonna have an important conversation about, maybe we didn't do a red line, but we just named it in the comments bubbles and put in the comment. In some cases, we did a change. Maybe we thought we could find, a compromise ourselves, but we also flagged that and put that in a comment and named, this is an issue, okay? So that's what came back in that draft. Another thing that we did is, this is specifically about the last section. There were a number of concerns raised about some of the language there, and we thought about this and we said, well, we can see at least two options here. Maybe we just remove a big portion of this section because it's reflecting a selected group's perspective. And if we do that, if we include that, we probably need to give an equal space to other perspectives. So maybe it's better just to not have that and keep things sort of more broadly acceptable. But then we said, well, maybe there are people who will really want that perspective in there. And so we took another stab at that and said, well, why don't we do our best based on the comments that we've seen to try to write up what the other perspective, in this case, might look like. And we can put it to the group and you can, first of all, if we do go the second route, that's our interpretation, not that group's, right? So they should make it their own, right? But you can decide, right? Just basically the thinking on there. And then so we shared out that second draft with you all. And then I'll also name since that second draft went out, our co-chairs each have sent us some potential additional small, I would say there's not a huge number, right? Some small revisions that they each thought maybe this could help the group. So we have those and we're most likely gonna kind of share that in Redline and work off of that draft with you so you can see what those suggestions were, but those have not been shared with the group. We'll be going through them today when we go through the draft. So that's what happened, just to make sure we're all on the same page. And then in a minute, we're gonna turn to the draft and start going through it. And our main approach today, we imagine, is tackling what we know are some issues that we see differences based on the comments. See if we can get some clarity on that. And then after that, kind of giving a broader chance for people to name any additional issues that are important to them, that they want us to work through. So you can see on the screen there sort of our take on what we expect this group will want to dig in on, right? Some of the things that seemed like needed more clarity, or maybe there are real differences. So from our perspective, issue number one relates to the role of the NRC and the management committee, right? How are they working together? What is each responsible for? Specifically with respect to plan creation, reporting, and oversight. So there were some changes in the draft that reflected some suggestions around that, but we want to get aligned, right? To the extent we can, at least on language, right? If not on all the details. Second, there was some language in the draft around a third-party entity or a consultant. Some differences and frankly, not total consistency in the draft around what that consultant is doing or how many there are, right? So we think we should talk about that, get some clarity and try to get some alignment. Also some questions on the timeline. We've been talking about 5 years from when, right? And there were some differences on that. And then finally, the issue we were talking about earlier around this final section, which has some more specific group perspectives, right? How we want to handle that as a group. And there's some different ways we can talk about. So those are the big pictures, big picture issues. Rachel, is there anything you want to add on any of that before we get in?
No, I guess I would add, I'm not gonna say no and then add, our feeling about this was that it would make sense for the group to first focus on what we have identified as these big issues. And that's not to ignore the smaller issues, but we felt like these things that Toby's just talked about are big enough that they can really interfere with completing a draft. And if we can resolve or clarify some of these at least, then that can clear the way. And then the other comments are, important, but not as, might not present as much of an obstacle. Let's put it that way. So our logic was, let's hit the big things first, especially in the early part of the meeting when people are still relatively fresh and have sugar in them, and then later dig down into some of these. That's the kind of the picture of the approach.
Yeah. Let me just take, does that sound like a reasonable approach to people? And we can point out the specific parts of the draft that these issues sort of relate to, so we can home in on those. And then we can go through the whole thing.
Sure.
Yes. Okay, great. All right, so we are going to go into this. I know though, even before we do that Sven, you had kind of requested at this stage as a meeting, before we start getting into the details of the draft, an opportunity to say some words. So I want to offer that to you at this point, and then we'll go into what you see on your screen.
Yeah, thank you. And this is more after I received the documents, my feelings had bubbled up. So I tried to structure this, and I think we can go in details then later. So let me read this to you. After reading the latest circulated version of the recommendation document, I not only continue to have major concerns, but I'm also majorly disappointed regarding the significant changes made and proposed to language we already voted on. After 1 year of work, spending hours in numerous meetings of the task force and its subcommittees, the task force fails to deliver a clear long-term recommendation regarding the future of the Nashoba Brooks watershed at the Warners Pond area. He can only speculate on why the task force failed to deliver a fact-based, honest, and independent evaluation and recommendation. But I believe that recommending setting up yet another committee in town with the same set of stakeholders will neither resolve the problem nor bring us to an honest and independent analysis 5 years down the road. In future similar situations, the town should set up a task force consistent of experts and non-conflicted citizens who, of course, can consult with interested parties and individuals, but special interest groups should not have a voting seat. In detail, I'm troubled by the following. The presented version deleted significant sections that have been part of the initial document the task force voted on its last meeting. These sections include, for example, descriptions of the broader and diverse perspective perspectives of task force members and the respective options. The new version does not include important points that Task Force member Jeff Collins brought forward at the last Task Force meeting, and that were the basis of the Task Force vote. The report remains silent on what happens in 5 years if the management plan fails. Given major information was deleted or neglected in the final or current draft, any new evaluation in 5 years or later will likely be based on this incomplete report. The town does not need a new committee, and even if so, the committee is too big. Its task is to take care of the management plan. The proposed structure just mirrors the composition of the current task force. Lastly, Concord Public Works has responsibility for the dam, but not for the management of the water body. Concord Public Works can be consulted if needed, but for the questions of the adaptive management plan, it is not needed in the proposed committee. Concord Public Works is not in the business of putting beads. Public Works already has a full plate. Thank you.
Okay. All right, thank you, Sven. All right, well, I think there are a number of issues in there that relate to the bullets on the screen that we can dig into. So let's get into it, okay? I'm going to share my screen and home in on some of these issues. So the first topic that we wanted to clarify is the relationship between this group and the NRC, and basically what is the committee responsible for, okay? And so, by the way, what I'm sharing here, okay, just to be clear, this is a version that includes a handful of red lines that came after the draft that you saw from the co-chairs. We will go through and talk about each of those, right? They were suggestions, we can accept them or not. I just wanted to have the most recent, our version that kind of has all of the possible suggestions in it. So that's why you might see some changes, okay? So I want to home in past this background section, okay, into the recommendations, okay? And you can see here, we're talking about the NRC creating a Warner's Pond Management Committee that would develop and implement an adaptive management plan for the pond. So the NRC creates the committee develops the plan, okay, and there's later pieces in there about the role of the consultant in that, right? And then we talk about what's in the plan, okay? And we'll talk about the timeline that's in there, okay? But then we get down here to this sort of more details about the management committee, okay? And we can see down here, right? Where is that? They had this initial task to develop a detailed adaptive management plan for consideration by the NRC, which the NRC would adopt or amend. Okay, then thereafter, it would be tasked with monitoring and reporting on implementation of the plan and offering specific recommendations to the NRC on pond management and other actions. It also explains up here, right, that it would be tasked with reporting and making recommendations to the NRC on an annual basis regarding the preparation and implementation of the plan, among other duties that are specified below. So I think the main change here, or the main thing that we're trying to clarify is this is a body underneath the NRC. I think that was clear. They are the ones that are going to be writing the plan, and we'll talk about the role of the consultant in that, right, and helping draft it and also be a backstop, right, around evaluation. And they are reporting to the NRC. The NRC basically maintains all the functions of town government that it currently has. It is deciding and allocating, contracts, right? It is approving or not the plan that comes from the committee, right? So the oversight function is actually the NRC, or the decision-making function of the NRC. This group is there to provide advice and sort of labor of creating the details of the plan, and then those details could be changed or amended by the NRC, but that NRC is the decision-making body.
Yep.
So that, I think, is what we were trying to clarify, and I think we want to test with you all kind of substantively, is that aligned with what we think the group, what you think you want, right? And then if there's wordsmithing that needs to happen, we can do so. But I think the draft says that now, unless I'm missing something, right? So, but that's the question to the group.
Yeah, I mean, I think what I like about this, I mean, it's clear to me, I think what's clear about it is it's the way a lot of things function today when there's a project. Especially when it has anything to do with wetlands or waterways, there's somebody who puts together a plan. And they go to the NRC reviews it at a public meeting and either asks for changes or approves it. So this is kind of saying, we're doing the same thing. We're not changing that relationship of how projects get done,
Mhm.
whether it's a house or a school or.
Well, the only,
Right.
the only difference, in this would be that it's not an individual who's doing it. This is,
Right, right.
this is a committee that's under the NRC from the very beginning, so that's a difference.
Yeah.
The way I was thinking about, I mean, to interrupt you, Becky, but is the NRC, for example, as we would move forward, how to proceed? My hope is the NRC would approve or maybe amend this original proposal that we're putting out in front of this plan, right? Then the NRC would appoint the committee. Then this Warner's Pond Committee would then clarify the funds available from CPA, working with is any money available still from them. Then this Warner's Pond Committee would seek the approval of the NRC and the staff of the natural resources to put out an RFP for a pond consultant. And then, and if they agree and they're willing to sign off on it, et cetera, it's gonna be a lot of work, I know that. Then the White Pond Committee would recommend a pond consultant to the NRC and to the staff, and they will be the ones hiring it for us. Then the consultant would recommend measurements to be used as a baseline for assessing progress. And they would also, this is reported back to the NRC and the Department of Natural Resources to see if that's acceptable. And then, of course, I could go on about all this because in 5 years to be a big report from an outside evaluator. That's what I heard Jeff say. I don't want to get into that now. I'm jumping ahead of you.
Mhm.
But that was the way I had envisioned this working. If that makes sense.
Is that the shared understanding? I mean, does anyone wanna make a case that it should be otherwise? Yeah, Jeff, you wanna say something?
I'll just mention, I
Yeah.
see on the very bottom there, the edit, external support from a pond management consultant, and in 5 years, a third-party evaluator to ensure blah, blah, blah. So that tracks with what Bill just mentioned. I think the value in having that person engaged up front is in study design and saying, here's what we're going to measure in 5 years. And that accords with, what we're the objectives that we're trying to improve recreational and ecological conditions.
I can see that, Jeff. I have a question, and this really is a question. I'm picturing someone again, like, and it could be any different company, but like Art, who works out with Bear Hill, and they're in there all the time helping them. So you wouldn't ask Art, you're suggesting, and this is okay, you wouldn't ask Art to set up the parameters, the measurements. You'd ask somebody else to set okay, I don't have any problem with that personally.
I see.
And once it's set, then we have it. Yeah. Right.
And I have two.
Can I just pause for a
Yeah.
second? I wanna give you back the floor, Jeff, but we're kind of going into our second bullet,
Yeah, I
which
know.
is great, which is the role of the consultants, but I just wanna test before we do that. Any concerns about this, the changes that were made around the role of the NRC and the committee between each other? Because,
I'd make a couple of points.
okay, great.
Um,
Sorry, we'll come back to
no.
Jeff. Yeah, yeah.
one of them was,
Oh, yeah, and Malcolm,
Yeah,
we see you as well.
Malcolm.
Okay, sorry, Malcolm. Yeah.
one of them is that we called this out when we first started looking at this, is that there's the pond, there's the dam, and there's the recreation area. And the community tends to think of them as all part of one system. And one of the ideas that we had about a management plan was it was supposed to begin to address community goals around all three of those.
Mhm.
And so as written, as this last revision comes up, when it says, that the NRC is going to come up with a pond management, it starts to all of a sudden sound like the watershed management plan, which is very focused on some specifics of the ecology of the pond, and begins to lose that thread that it's important that the particularly the recreation uses of the area are being considered as informing the goals of what we're trying to manage the pond to be.
Mhm.
And whether or not the dam is being maintained in a way to support that,
Mhm.
which is where we found, at least I observed a gap that said that, you know, we had these different departments that had these roles and they weren't inclined to talk to each other.
Mhm.
And so we were hoping by putting a management plan and then calling for the wider stakeholder meetings
Mhm.
to occur at least annually, that conversation was happening about sort of the larger goals
Mhm.
there. So
Yeah,
just
yeah, yeah.
on that overarching purpose, and then I would be a little cautious too about. There's nothing wrong with voicing an opinion in a report like this about the level of delegation that the NRC may or may not want to have with respect to this, but if they decide to set up a group like this, the reason that you do that as a committee is A, you have a lot of work to do just on the NRC, and B, you may or may not have the expertise within that team to do it. So you want to delegate the expertise. So I think it's a little bit more than just, you know, going back and saying, Mother may I, with every important decision to the NRC. If I were sitting on the NRC, I would at least give some thought about delegating the program goal setting to that group and ask them to come back and check in about that, and then ask them to come up with their own implementation way around that. And as long as and so, and then when we can talk a little bit more about consultants and stuff, I have some
Okay.
thoughts on that, but
Let me,
those 2
yeah,
points
that's
I
great.
think are
Mark.
pretty important in terms of the initial setup of where you were.
So,
Yeah, go ahead, son.
just a question, so the goal is not just the adaptive management plan in that sense. It is then including the road park and including that.
Well,
That's much more than we discussed in the past.
yeah, I don't think Mark's, I don't want to talk for you, Mark, but I don't think Mark, at least in our subcommittee, we weren't talking about controlling Giroux Park. But we're talking about working with the Recreation Commission in what they're doing at Giroux and making, you know, some kind of a
Yeah.
dialogue between the two. And that's actually what's in there. It actually suggests
Okay, that's
that there's a Concord Recreation Commission have membership on the committee, and that there be at least a 1 year meeting, if not more frequent meeting, with the other stakeholders in the group, like for example, the Scouts. So,
So let me just test that, right? So, right, I mean, I do think, Mark, you raising, you know, what I think the group understood to be an important part of the proposal number one, right? Which is that it does have this sort of, you know, interagency element to it, right? I think we've been, as a result of this process and the feedback, sort of clarified that it exists clearly within the existing town structure under the ambit of the NRC, right?
really, that was.
Yeah.
It's a secret firm.
Awesome.
It's my burner phone.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'm just curious on this piece, right, like, what we have, so the key pieces that are here is that right now, right, representation from all town departments involved with implementing elements of the plan, which maybe is or is not the right thing, but, you know, the NRC, the Recreation Commission, and Concord Public Works Commission, right, so they have a membership, but I think what you're naming is there should be maybe an explicit purpose of the committee to kind of take, well, what is it, I guess, like, we need to say something here that's different.
So, yeah, that's what I was gonna ask you, that's kind of the nub of what you're pointing out, in that it's missing that overarching
Well,
Well,
goal.
isn't that the Envision Concord goals?
Yeah,
This adaptive management group is still guided by that.
Right, and that's,
Full set of five
Yeah.
criteria, that is the five criteria.
Right, I'm just calling out that there's a risk that it sort of devolves into just the
Right.
boundaries of the pond parcel.
Yeah.
And,
Okay.
and that
mhm,
probably doesn't meet the community goals and
Ah.
needs and wants as
So
we
it's
understand.
recognizing the larger.
Yeah,
so,
Sort of instead of working in a
the
silo,
proposal.
you're opening it up, really,
Right.
you're sharing and ideas.
should we, I mean, should I just say here, I'm gonna spitball some language, right? Like, the committee should endeavor to, the committee should, like, consider the, broader pond system, right, including ecological, recreational, right, and other goals, included in Envision Concord, right? And I will fix these typos. Concord, right, in its development and oversight and
Yeah.
whatever
Manage-
of actions and recommendations.
You know, we
For-
originally played with a mission statement that
Mhm.
actually says that.
yeah,
It says in the mission statement, that we were gonna be concerned with the recreational, historical, as well as that was in the order.
Mhm.
Environmental, so it was in there. So, and in fact, if you elaborate on that mission statement, you'll get that covered.
Yeah.
yeah, in
Mhm.
terms of, we had, for example, suggested that the recreation commission and department should track the amount of recreational uses and the types of programs and have some program goals for that. So we
Mhm.
know that coming up is a proposal for a design for some kind of dock.
Mhm.
And that's gonna be obviously put in the water. So where's the intersection around planning what that's purpose is and what access looks like and how that affects that? I think that if we don't bring that planning and implementation into some kind of focus in a group like this, then we're missing a
Mhm.
big piece of
And
it.
just to clarify, there have been conversations between staff, recreation staff and natural resources staff on that particular project.
Good,
Yeah, I mean,
and,
we've been
Yeah.
coordinating with recreation,
yeah,
and recreation
right.
identified as a, component since,
That-
the original watershed management plan.
That's good,
Contemplated.
and by making that a specific responsibility that, for example, the Recreation Commission and the NRC agree is going to reside in this subgroup, then there becomes a natural focal point for the citizen input about how that's meeting what the community wants, and there's a natural champion for whatever programs then become available to the community.
So I'm taking a stab at putting in some specific language here in two places, right? So we have the adaptive management plan, right? I've added here goals, metrics, and performance targets should also include recreational and other components related to the Envision Concord criteria,
Mhm.
right?
It's Envision Concord and our five criteria that the way we spelled it out, I don't know if that helps clarify it, so somebody doesn't have to go back to the five Envision Concord.
Great.
You know,
We
the
have
vision
our-
criteria as.
Yeah, we have our.
As
criteria.
articulated by the task force.
By the time.
Yeah.
Great, and then, so that's one piece.
And that's
I'll take
attached
that.
as well.
Yeah,
Right.
that's below, and then the other piece that I added here was, the committee should consider the broader pond system, including ecological, recreation, historical, and other goals included in Envision Concord,
That's it.
in the manner in which it.
And I think it
conducts
should say will consider, not should.
Great.
Just is their mission.
Yeah.
right?
Okay,
Yeah.
so I wanna just pause, Malcolm's been waiting patiently, so I wanna go to him. Malcolm, go ahead.
Okay, have I unmuted myself?
Yeah, you're good, I hear you.
Okay, good. Toby, I don't know whether this is the time. It doesn't feel like it's the right time for me to talk about what you and I talked about a couple of days ago, but it would have been better for me to have talked, when Sven or around
Right.
when Sven spoke, but I couldn't work out how to raise my hand at that time. I think I kept clapping instead of raising my hand.
Thank you.
So I leave it to you because I don't want to break up the flow of the discussion right now, but I leave it to you so that I do want to have a voice at some
Yeah.
point.
I mean, Malcolm, I think you have the floor. I think we can pick up right where we left off. And
Okay.
just for awareness of the group, I want to just do a little mea culpa. Inexplicably, completely CBI's fault. One of Malcolm's comments from the survey was irreversibly lost in cyberspace. So Malcolm and I had a conversation. He wasn't sure if he was going to be able to be here tonight. So I don't know how familiar with a bit of what you're going to say. I was going to say it on your behalf, but he wanted to basically convey the substance of what that comment was, right, to the group.
Yeah.
So go ahead, Malcolm.
Okay, thanks. I want to say this because what I'm hearing from people is that I am being labeled as I'm part of the pro-dam group. And I want to be absolutely clear that I have been sticking to the thing we signed up to in this task force when we joined. I want to follow the best option. I am not mired in wanting to, only have a dam or only have whatever. But I only have 4 points on this. The first is that I see the choice that the task force has made as being a complete betrayal of the task force's mandate. And I think that the task force's mandate came out of the debate over to dredge or to remove the dam or to do nothing. And it was very much a binary. And now we have created something that is neither of those two things. And I think that the task force was created with the expectation that we would make a decision to resolve this issue so that it doesn't drag on for 5 years, 10 years, 50 years, or whatever. And we have abdicated that responsibility. Secondly, I see that we have wound the clock back to 2012. There is literally nothing in what's being proposed in this management plan that wasn't proposed in 2012. Some of it has been twisted around a little bit or presented slightly differently, but it's exactly the same. And it is, in my estimation, ignoring the facts of what has been done in the ensuing years. And it is also sometimes quite directly insulting to the NRC by implying, if not overtly stating, that they have fallen down on their job and not done things correctly. And I feel that that is totally inappropriate for this committee to be recommending. Thirdly, there's the issue of cost. I think that we seem to be saying, well, this is the cheap option. And it's exactly the opposite of that. This is the single most expensive option. Because if you follow everything through to its logical conclusion, after 5 years or 10 years or however long we decide that this adaptive management plan has to go, we will still have to either dredge the impoundment or remove the dam. So we will spend however many thousands, hundreds of thousands, or millions of dollars on adaptive management. And then after 5 years or longer, we will then have to make the same decision that we're faced with now, only with 5 years of inflated costs. So I do not see how we are taking the cheaper option in this. And then my last point about this is that this was being held up by some as being a compromise. It is not a compromise. It is simply taking the path of least resistance between two parties that have directly opposite opinions. A compromise would be where the two parties can sit down together and actually discuss what would meet both of our needs in terms of dam removal and in terms of dredging or maintaining the impoundment. And I've added 2 points, Toby. I won't speak anymore during this meeting. But I've added 2 points based on the feedback that I saw from other people about the process involved in this, in the last few weeks, creating this document, other than the fact that all of my input was lost, which, you know, I don't blame Toby for, but yeah, I mean, you could look at it and say the only naysayer has all of his input lost. That's a little alarming. I think that the process that has happened with providing feedback into this, the draft document that Toby and produced, saw a significant change in the way that members of this task force have been behaving. Up until this point, I have been impressed by everybody's congeniality and by the collaborative spirit that everybody has taken. Yes, tempers can get frayed. Yes, there have been disagreements, but we have remained collegial and friendly. And while, you know, Vicky and I spent hours disagreeing with each other during the subcommittee meeting, I still respect Vicky and hope that she respects me. However, in this particular exercise, I saw several members of the committee descending into being petty, insulting, and belittling other members of the committee, which I take tremendous offense to, as I am one of those people included in that group. And my final point is that this resulting document is no longer, in my opinion, a document from the task force or representing the views of the task force. It, at this point, simply represents the views of the Friends of Warner's Pond. It does not represent the broad stakeholder group within Concord. And with that, as I do not agree with all of this, I won't participate anymore in the wordsmithing, etc. Thank you.
All right. Well, Malcolm, thank you for sharing, you know, your perspective on this. And I think we know that it is in good faith, and we know that you two are a member of this group that's been working hard, and your perspective does matter. And I'm sorry that it got removed. But I want to just note that, you know, it is still welcome here, even if you're not aligned with the direction we're going in. Okay, so I don't know if anyone wants to respond or if we should get back into the document.
I'd rather not respond.
Yeah,
I think it would just get us into that kind of arguing that we don't need to do anymore.
Yeah.
But I think Sven had something.
Yeah, I just have other points maybe there. I just want to go back.
Okay, so we're gonna
Okay.
return in, okay,
Right, so
So can you put it back?
yeah, so I'll put it back up on the
And
screen.
I'm more on the point with what the composition is, as said in my beginning statement. As long as engineering is not needed for the dam, Public Works doesn't need to have a seat there.
Yeah.
That's the concern, just to give full background, is that there's a history in town that again and again, Public Works is getting pulled into stuff, and suddenly Public Works personnel needs to do things. We don't have the budget, we don't have the time for that. If Public Works is needed over and above its responsibilities, that needs to be addressed in the budget process. But you're there to be consulted with.
Sure.
If there's information needed on the dam or other engineering measures, Public Works is always available.
That makes a lot of sense. I mean, I know even in discussion with you about whole different departments, nothing to do with this.
Yeah.
How that is come into budgets without working with Public Works, so I get that, yeah.
Yeah, I would just add that I recognize the impact that the use of these areas may have on park and tree, specifically the maintenance, because that was one of the things that we was an issue. I know that I think it's largely been addressed through, already, but there were some concerns about how well the dam was being maintained in those areas when we started this work. And so we would want to make sure that they continue. So when I was thinking about Public Works, I was thinking beyond, there's obviously the basic dam inspection process, but really primarily about how park maintenance and that aspect of it, which is another section of Public Works as well.
Yeah, but that then is grabbing authority over Gero Park. But it is already a process where
Right.
Public Works is involved in
Right.
the maintenance of
Yeah,
Gero
and
Park.
again, I was thinking about it in terms of coordinating the area and the seams that we saw when we started looking at this.
Are people ready to move on? Oh, Jeff's.
Just a quick comment, it's kind of on the edge of the committee and the consultants, but in response to what I'm hearing about it, zooming out here, we've all talked about the idea of integrating, we talked about trails, we talked about river connectivity, all those things, and all those things are great for the community, but we were ultimately charged with focusing on the condition of Warner's Pond and its inadequacy for ecological and recreational conditions, was my understanding. So I'm concerned in why I raised this question of the external consultant around study design, setting objectives, metrics, and then collecting those. Is that if we zoom out and if we said in 5 years, hey, recreational use of the greater pond area has tripled because we've opened Gero Park, because Scouts has increased, doubled their numbers, because we built trails. And we say success, yeah, this is awesome. The pond could have continued to degrade. We haven't changed, we haven't invested in and measured pond conditions. We've measured this proxy that is not getting at what we want. So my concern, we expressed in some of the earlier comments, but the analogy just came to mind. Does anybody remember on Weekend at Bernie's? Weekend at Bernie's, these guys want to hang out, they're invited to a big mansion and they get there and the host is dead. But they hang out with them all week because they want to have a great weekend. So I'm afraid that we set up a process where Warner's Pond continues to degrade, but we're happy because we have these adjacent metrics. So
I don't understand the adjacent metric. The way I was reading it seemed that we were gonna do just the kind of measurement. I think you're espousing, that's what I would expect. I think that's what what you described is what I'm expecting.
Yeah.
And my interpretation, what I read is that we're gonna do that.
Yeah.
And I know the Scouts are very interested in being involved in that. It can help them with merit badges.
So there's recreation and use of the pond, that makes sense. If it's use of Gero Park, that does not make sense.
I think our focus should be on the pond. I agree. And I think that's what we're headed, but we have to be aware of adjacent use. If all of a sudden there's a huge increase or there's anticipated increase because of all the housing then we need to be really alert to what that's going to do to the pond. And not only in terms of the pond already being degrading, I was even thinking about this, I could picture I don't know, the pond being overused. Very quickly, with a huge population, and that could happen too. So there are those issues, absolutely. I think you're right. But I think we should measure the very specifics that you had suggested.
Can I just check? I mean, I wanna, as much as we can, like bring
Yeah,
it back.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Sure.
Language in the document, right?
Yeah.
So we have, this new bullet, the committee will consider the broader pond system, including ecological, recreational, historical, and other goals included in Envision Concord in the way it conducts its work. That is trying to get at Mark's point here. We also added above that the management plan should include goals and metrics related to not just ecological things that are explicitly laid out, but also recreational, the elements of Envision Concord, basically. But I'm curious, is there a specific edit that you're suggesting, Jeff, to get at this point, or?
No, just expressing that I hope it's captured in the spirit, that it's
Yeah, I think-
related
I think
Yeah,
to
absolutely.
the condition of
Yeah.
the pond.
I mean,
Yeah.
Right.
I think to Jeff's earlier point too, it is important that the objective conditions of the pond is documented early,
Mhm.
and that those measurements and that condition is monitored throughout this whole process. So that we know what the starting point is and can know whether or not the pond is getting better, getting worse, or remaining the same. With the goal of answering the question that I think we all had going into this and still don't really have an answer to is how much time does this pond have in the condition that it's in before it becomes, functionally unusable for what the community wants to be doing with it? We don't know the answer to that question, and I would like to propose that one of the goals of this should be to be able to answer that question with some higher degree of precision than, maybe decades, maybe not. Which is my perception of where we are today.
So I wanna just, again, keep this back,
Yeah.
focus on specific language. One, so we do have here, the assessments will compare the current state of the pond to a baseline established at the beginning of the project, right? So I think that gets to
Mhm.
what you're saying, Mark. And we have, right, the adaptive methodology, we have clear and specific goals and metrics, so I really wanna keep us like changes and
Yeah.
to this piece specifically.
So
Yeah.
the only tweak I would make to that is I would ideally like to see that those measurements coming out annually or at least biannually. I don't think it's wait 5 years and then.
No,
and
no,
then
no,
take-
it's, not- that's not, no.
Okay,
Absolutely.
In ongoing progress, these result in ongoing progress reports and updates to the
Every
plan
year.
at least every year.
yeah,
Yeah.
okay, great.
Okay.
Yeah,
So-
with a major assessment.
Yeah, and then
Yeah.
we'll talk about the 5-year thing when we
Right.
take the timeline, but yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah, Vicky, go ahead.
Yeah, I did wanna talk about the metrics we're already putting out for this consultant to already measure, and for me, it's like, I don't know that we should define it yet until they come on board, because to me, saying that we should measure the number of birds, for example, and is it going to increase? We've already heard from some national experts that we have the most diversity of birds on Warner's Pond in all of Concord. So is it likely to increase bird variety? Probably not. So does that mean it's gonna fail if that's a metric? Fish, we have an extraordinary number of types of fish, the diversity of fish. Will we increase that number of fish if we don't include trout and herring? Probably not. Like, but it's been there 200 years, and that's the diversity of fish we have in this pond. So putting that as a criteria that has to be measured and improved, to me, is like setting up the group for failure. I agree that dissolved oxygen is something we all agree needs to change. We all agree the water temperature, we all agree the nutrients, we all agree the invasives. But there are some items that I don't think doing this is going to increase diversity of.
But
So
on
I
the other
wanna,
hand.
I wanna pause before you even
Yeah.
respond. Again, I mean, this is getting a little bit into sort of
Yep.
wordsmithing of issues that I think we can get to,
Yeah,
but,
okay.
maybe we can go down systematically some of the big picture issues, but Vicky, I do take your point. I mean, this is the sentence that I think you're referring to that I'm highlighting right here.
Yeah, I thought that's the
Okay.
section you wanted to comment,
Right.
on. Sorry.
Oh, no, okay, no, yeah, okay, yeah, I get it. No worries. Maybe I have a vision in my head that's not being clearly communicated, but anyway, so I want to be clear, right? EG is, for example, right, we're just saying it should include water quality, biodiversity, right, aquatic invasives and recreation. We give some examples of what that might look like for each of them. So I'm curious if that is,
Do we
there's
need
a
to include
specific.
then that list if we're saying it's up to the,
I'd like to
Committee?
just speak to Vicky about this
yeah,
briefly.
yeah,
I think you do, Vicky, and the reason why is, again, I'm looking at what I've seen them doing out at Bear Hill. I know a different
Yeah.
place, by the way. You wanna know, for example, if something you're doing is hurting the pond.
okay.
For example,
Okay.
if, I know that many people think we can't do any drawdown. If we did, and it hurts the amphibians and the reptiles, then we need to know that,
True, true.
so.
This is about measurement.
Yeah.
You're
Exactly.
talking about
It's an increase
interpretation.
of
Yeah,
diversity,
yeah.
no, increasing.
Yeah, I know,
diversity
but
This is
Is what
measurement.
it says, isn't it?
Yeah, we wanna measure,
no,
measure.
this is talking about
Mm.
measuring
Okay,
diversity.
okay, so maybe the performance targets of biodiversity of fish. what is a performance target of the number of types of?
No, I think it's, I think it's
We're
getting
not,
into-
we're not.
let's get into the weeds.
No,
get it.
but
Okay.
it's
Then if
too
it's
big a
that,
deal.
then I agree.
Yeah.
Okay, can I make a
Okay.
procedural suggestion?
Yeah, please.
Can we try having comments be suggest specific language?
I think that's a great idea.
Good point.
Yeah.
Just, cause I'm hearing great comments.
Yeah. Yeah,
I'm appreciative of them,
yeah,
but it
yeah,
seems to me the last two significant ones that were in it, we had addressed. And it doesn't devalue the comment, it's
Right.
just, we gotta get through it all.
yeah, yeah. I would echo that.
All right.
Double down. All right.
Right. Good, David. Good.
So I wanna go to kind of down the list, right? But I did see your hand, Sven. Is this something that,
I was exactly in his.
okay, great. All right.
Oh.
All right. So the next issue I want to talk about is the role of the consultant or consultants. Okay, so this draft right now, and this, and by the way, we are gonna get to the timeline, okay? But right now, we have at the end of 5 years, right, and this was a revision that came from one of our co-chairs, the use of a qualified independent evaluator to offer a concrete assessment of the management actions. Okay, previously we had the independent study design, all of that established and created in partnership with a qualified independent entity, i.e. a consultant, right? That is not the same entity carrying out the recurring management actions, right? So I think that we just need clarity on what we're actually recommending here, right? I think, Jeff, you've made a case that you want, maybe it's both, right? We want a consultant to come up with this that's not the same, that's person who's gonna be doing it, which I think is the main point you wanted to make last time, right? You don't want the person who's pulling the weeds to be evaluating how effective that is, right? Based on a conflict of interest, right? And then also, you know, the 5-year mark is another question. So I just don't know. I think we just need to decide what we're actually recommending.
This is not related to this. Is it possible to share that version? Cause I can't follow on the screen.
Yeah, it's different.
It's really
Yeah.
challenging to understand what's happening.
Yep.
Thank you.
I will email it to the task force. Well, if I email it, will you get it?
Yeah.
Since you're on your computer? Okay.
It's actually on the website.
It is,
Ah,
this,
okay.
this version,
The version without changes made as of the start of the meeting is on the website.
that's good enough.
Okay,
Okay.
And
great.
can you just highlight the sections you are discussing so
Okay,
that we couldn't
yes.
read?
Very good. I'm gonna highlight this
Yeah.
here. Okay,
So this is something we talked about in our last meeting here, and I thought we were all on board with, or, you know, when we talked about voting on the direction with the things that were discussed. And I think Vicky made my point around this precisely, which is that these things are complicated, right? And so having, you know, considering this an experiment of what will happen
Right.
in the future if we apply these practices. That's you know, it's complicated. I wouldn't be able to do a study design, but if someone sets that up and says, okay, here's what we're gonna measure, here's how you're gonna collect the data. Here's how we're gonna look at it, then that would be really helpful for the town, for the NRC to evaluate, the progress.
So the idea is to bring in, is to have an independent evaluator to check on the work.
Yeah, I
Essentially
think-
of the consultant.
Two parts in that, this part that's deleted right now, the study design. So working with this committee, what are we trying to measure? And then, okay, here is the data we're gonna need to establish that with rigor. And collected at this frequency, and then over time or at that, you know, end point. Do the data collection and answer that question, how does everything compare?
So I personally, if I can say, I agree with you. I don't have any problem with any of that. I think the only question, and I don't even know how to, is. Do we need, and maybe we do, an independent evaluator at the beginning to set those markers? And if we do, okay, I'm okay with that. But I still think we're gonna need, this committee is going to need, whoever they are, is gonna need an ongoing relationship with a consultant to try out different methodologies.
Oh, yeah.
So there's like 2 consultants that we need. We need an independent evaluator at the beginning to set the standards, and then we need an ongoing consultants who worked with this committee to make sure that they're being
Yeah, so the
addressed.
committee says to that second party,
Yeah,
here's your job,
Yeah.
have at it.
They're the
Just that it was
perform,
unclear the
There's-
way that was written, that this is what makes
Yeah.
sense.
there's a measure side and a perform side. And the perform side is responsible for implementing whatever the, the aquatic invasives program for year one is gonna be some method. And they do that. And but the measurement side, which is part of the design and comes ahead of that, is it hopefully establishing the longitudinal data over which the effectiveness of these various performed actions are going to be measured.
Mhm.
So I think that we're all agreeing to that. And I'm not, to me, reading through this, it seemed clear enough that that's what's gonna happen, but I guess other people had it.
You mean the new language seems to capture
Yeah,
the previous?
I didn't have too much problem with the previous language
Right.
either, but maybe that's because I was reading what I expected to see.
Let's get clarity on what the concept is and make
Yeah.
sure we're aligned, and then I do think you sort of need like a little bit of both of what's on the
Yeah.
screen here right now, and we'll workshop that in a second, but yeah, David.
So what I'm here talking about is that there's gonna be one consultant, in each case. And I guess I'm just wondering, is it likely to find someone with the environmental ecological expertise who also has the recreational expertise in one consultant? And does this prevent us from hiring two different consultants for those two different expertise if they don't come in one person? Cause I would naturally assume
Yeah.
a firm that's great at the ecological side of things would be great at the recreational side.
Yeah, I think that
If it doesn't prevent us from doing it, I got
It
nothing
does-
to.
it doesn't prevent that, and, because this is sort of an ongoing management plan, there will need to be choices about what kind of activity is in scope, so. If the focus is on trying to, improve the access points, that's one contract versus the trying to control aquatic invasives is another one versus what, trying to design an intervention that does something about water temperature is a third thing. And it's unlikely that all of those can even be funded in 1 year beyond a maintenance level. So that's the work of putting together a management plan, is to say, okay, which metric are we trying to affect this year and what resources can be put towards that?
I was just concerned that the discussion seemed to be.
Right, like one
that there
consultant.
would, yeah.
Okay.
No,
And
I think what
maybe-
we're asking for is, professional support
Right.
in independent professional support in study design,
Right,
right?
and in carrying out.
And then that is separate from whatever
ongoing-
professional support is
an ongoing.
ongoing in terms of implementation.
And
Right.
we believe the current language support.
I think we need to adjust the current language.
Okay.
Yeah. So can I try to do that in the live with you all? I always hesitate to do this, but here goes.
You might want to go back earlier, because I think there's, in our very
Right.
first statements, we talk about hiring a consultant. Maybe it doesn't matter, I don't know. Wasn't it earlier?
This is.
Just look for the word consultant.
Okay, well, I'll go up here. So this is the adaptive management.
There it
This
is.
the
Oh, there,
first
just pass it.
Yeah, it's right there.
Or was it?
Up there.
Yeah, with the help of a pond management consultant, yeah.
Yeah.
Can you just add or consultants?
Oh, yeah, help a pond management consultant.
Other consultants as deemed.
Or,
necessary.
or
No,
just
it's
in
the
parentheses, S on the end
Yeah,
of
that's
consultant.
But they're not all
That was-
pond
yeah.
management. consultants.
Right, or other.
Well, they would be.
consultants.
You're really,
Consider
you're looking at the pond
consultants as
and
deemed
Okay.
again, I'm thinking Bear Hill Pond, for example, they've had a real problem with their beach. They tried other things, it didn't work. And they're concerned about swimming. So now they have had people out there trying to do suction pulling of the milfoil. They're not sure that's successful either, but it's all the same company that's been, not the ones who are pulling the weeds,
Yeah.
but who are consulting with them about what to do to proceed.
But that, and it doesn't impact the concept of the study or setting up some metrics and then about.
No, set up the metrics, have the initial metrics set
Yeah.
up by one person and then bring in a good consulting firm, how to make the pond, useful for everyone, including the wildlife.
And then are you envisioning that the first consultant, set the metrics, would go back and evaluate the
5
work
years.
that the consultant
In
did?
5 years, not right away.
Not right away, but I mean.
Because
say
every
that
year,
would be-
the updates would come from your standard
Right.
consultant you have in there, who's gonna be telling you what the water quality is like, what they've been able, and then you the real. Bring it back for 5 years,
Okay.
them or someone else,
So that's what you meant when you were talking about there's like two consultants.
two consultants.
That makes sense.
The independent study design. And I'm just gonna move this for a second, whereby the metrics are established in partnership with a qualified independent entity, not the same entity or entities carrying out their recurring management actions, right? And at the end of at the end of 5 years, right, use of the same or a similar
Yeah, I was gonna say similar.
or a
maybe
similar qualified independent entity to offer a concrete assessment of the management actions taken to improve the ecological health of the pond.
Not just the ecological.
Yeah, assessment of the management
Look at
actions taken,
criteria,
period,
yeah.
right? Then,
Should we be saying?
Yeah. okay, so then there's also, ongoing
Assessment.
what we say metrics, yeah,
What are you trying to say?
I don't know, does that capture it?
I think I just let it go. I don't think I understand, I think what Vicky's trying to suggest about having a broader thing, but we should concentrate on the pond. If you make the pond a better pond, then people are gonna be using, they're gonna be fishing, they're gonna be kayaking. So
For sure.
concentrate on the pond.
Hallelujah.
Okay, so, I know you all are not following this, but let me just read this paragraph to you all, okay? Independent study design, whereby the metrics are established in partnership with a qualified independent entity, i.e. a consultant, not the same entity or entities carrying out the recurring management actions. At the end of 5 years, the use of the same or similar qualified independent evaluator to offer a concrete assessment of the management actions taken. This assessment will compare the current state of the pond to a baseline established at the beginning of the project.
I think you should have it right there.
Okay, then we don't need this metric should be collected at a sufficient frequency and scale.
Because it's stated other places,
Yeah, within the study design.
right?
Okay. Let me say, right, okay. Did that capture what we want? Yeah, okay, so just to be clear, we've kind of made this one focus on establishing the metrics and taken out the monitoring, because we want that, or taken out the ongoing monitoring and implementation, right?
It's elsewhere.
Right,
It's elsewhere.
yeah, okay.
Yeah. So this is the paragraph where I'd like to jump to the timeline too, because
Okay,
I think
we're
it should
there,
be
we're there.
after 5 years of management, so. We all know that sometimes it can take a little bit of time to get something like this set up and if it, if that is. Even just getting into the budget cycle, I could see that funding for such a thing might not make it until the 27.
Yeah.
Or even possibly the 28 budget cycle, and so then it starts, so it's after 5 years of management. Then there's an assessment, and I think that makes it pretty clear what the intent of this is.
Yep, I
Agreed.
like what you said.
So instead of at the end of 5 years, just say after 5 years of management, and I would.
Yeah.
that.
So I think we need to air some differences on this, because I know there are some, and we'll see what we can do, right?
Yeah, my only comment there is that, but I think as we've worked through, we've considered the sort of financial and permitting feasibility of any option we pursue, right? So 5 years of management with no start date is Could be 2035. Could be the community never comes together, it could be nothing ever happens, and evaluation never occurs, and so there's no kind of, if we put in no later than, something like that.
Yeah, I mean, we could go back to the setting up of the management plan and try and add something to be a forcing function to make sure that that does start. So,
Or even if in,
yeah,
like, oh, we can't find the money that, people don't
Mhm.
support it, then it's like, well, what are you gonna do? And nothing has changed in 5 or 10 years.
well, I think at the very minimum, the measurements get started. And if nothing is attempted and nothing is done in 5 years, then I think most of us know that the direction's not going to be good.
Right.
So that doesn't bode well for the
Mhm.
pond.
Because I would say at the same time, Jeff, if it takes us a year to put together the committee,
Mhm.
and then it takes us a year to put out an RFP and hire somebody, we're 2 years into this, and it takes them 6 to 8 months to start working on it. We're only giving the management plan 2 years. The likelihood, and we want it to really measure if it can work, right? And I don't think giving it 2 years is really a fair assessment of, is it going to work, whatever they come up with.
Yeah.
So we wanna really give it a chance, and so what we said was 5 years is a good timeline for seeing if any of these things will work. So whatever, I think, to me, and what Mark said is like, we're gonna give it 5 years of actually trying things. Now, I hope it doesn't take 8 years to start, right? I think everyone's hope here is that this is 2 years away from actually starting management
Yeah.
action. Right, at the most, I'm hoping maybe it's this fall, but I'm very, very optimistic on that, but.
Yeah.
We should give it a chance so that we can assess it.
Yeah, I think 2 years would be too short. I think 3 years would be sufficient.
Well, we said 5, I think I'd like to stick with 5.
The current wording, sorry, Liz, my hesitation or concern around here is there's no outer limit.
That's a fair point.
I mean, this may suggest like a way forward here, right? But let's hear from Liz. Go ahead, Liz.
Can we start a trigger point that says like 5 years from the approval of the study design?
Mhm.
Cause that,
And that what happens?
that is the endpoint. Okay. So if it takes some time to get the committee to do the RFP, to do all that stuff, you have a little flexibility, but once we have the study, you have a study design, you should be ongoing. And now I can't remember if someone said like, what if you're having problems getting the funding in? Frankly, if you're having problems getting the funding into the budget, this plan is never gonna work, so that needs to be taken into account.
Mhm.
So,
Agreed.
I think if you have like here's our trigger for the start, so you start it when either you hire your management company or you finalize your study design. There's like a firm start. And then
Mhm.
from there.
Okay, so it's one suggestion for a specific edit. Thoughts, David? Yeah.
To what Jeff said, I was thinking along the lines as I was listening and observing this, that any kind of long-term project plan I've been involved in, we have tended to do a halfway point real summation and all, which would be around the 3 year mark, 2.5 years. And I also understand, I can relate to the point about, you're talking about 2 annual cycles of data or 3. For a lot of things, that is, I get what you're saying, is that might be sufficient. Would I rather know 2.5, 3 years from now, a really clear idea what's going on? When I think it's really clear, or have to wait 5 years? Could we put a halfway point or 3 year assessment in? And let the committee determine at that point, it's like, wow, it's just, these results are super clear. We wanna start acting one way or another at that time. Why make them wait 5 years is what, I guess what I'm saying, if we can know sooner.
My only hesitation is look how long it took us to get the dredging RFP out and get an RFP.
Well, I'm saying
response
from
back.
the start, yeah.
Yeah, or even the bathymetry, we couldn't, we said last year, they couldn't do it over the
I
winter,
understand.
so you have to wait.
I'm
those
just talking about
things.
from when you
Yeah.
start.
From when you, so what is Liz's option, like, could we give it a start date and then,
Mhm.
we're saying we're gonna report back every year.
I understand, but
Yeah.
like I say, big projects that I've worked on, we've done, if whatever timeline we would do, we would say, let's check things halfway through.
Sure.
And
Mhm.
often we make adjustments to how we do
Sure,
things.
sure.
We do a major review at that point.
Yeah, so I'm ultimately concerned with recommending a process that where no progress is an option. And under this, with an open-ended endpoint, with no endpoint, no progress remains an option. So getting to proposing specific language, one could be somewhere in here where we say 5-year implementation, progress updates, wherever we mention this final assessment, if we said no later than 2031 or 2032 or something like that, because that's plenty of time.
Mhm.
Yeah,
to
yeah,
get the
that
sense
makes
of
sense.
running, identify funding, if there isn't funding support, then to Liz's point,
Yeah.
that's a signal.
So what if we were to say something like 5-year implementation timeline to test and evaluate the management approaches along with annual project, progress updates and plan refinement, right? So this is actually happening annually, right? Which starts on the approval of the study design. I mean, we could do what you said, Liz, right? This is
I-
hiring of the pond management company, but I think,
I mean, you could also do
Yeah.
it from
right,
when you seat the committee. I mean, I just
Yeah,
kind of grab
They have to
the,
write the,
they do have a lot of work to do.
yeah.
so you could say upon approval of the study design. And end no later than 2032.
32.
Alright,
I think that makes sense.
I do too.
It may not be the, the 5th year, maybe back to David's point, maybe the actual 3rd year or 4th year of the actual
mhm,
Yeah.
process, but okay,
But there's an end date.
yeah.
I think that makes sense. Deliver that for sure.
Mhm.
I think one of the things that I noticed when we were looking at the, what was it, 2 decades of data or so that they
Yeah.
had from Bear Hill, was that they could point to it and say, oh, that was the winter of 2015
Right.
and, you know, or this was the extreme drought year, or this is, you know, whatever the hurricane came through. And so, you know, I think anything shorter than 5 years runs the risk of having some extraordinary event occur in the middle of it that sort of really potentially skews what the results are gonna be, and nobody can tell when that's gonna happen or if it's gonna happen. So I'm a little leery of going any shorter than that for that reason.
okay. I'm just going through and looking for 5, right? Yeah,
Yeah, that's fine.
Like
Good way of
major.
doing it, it's a good way of doing it.
And also the 2030 is right down there at the bottom.
Yeah, so this, I think this can be removed now, we've addressed this elsewhere.
Mhm.
And so. There's for a 5-year timeline, 5-year timeline. For 5 years. Beginning. At the time of approval of the study design and ending no later than 2032. Transition time, while also not, just to your point, Jeff, right? While also not leaving the timeline perpetually open-ended or something in the case of delays. Right? Okay. I think that's all 5-year mark. Yeah. Okay, all right. Okay, we'll make sure that we've covered all the bases, but I think those are the main spots where we talk about the timeline.
Mhm.
All right, and so the next issue, we wanted to talk about was this final section, on additional task force member perspectives. Okay. So Sven, I imagine this was the piece that one of the pieces you were referring to on language that was removed, right? So just to say what's still in this draft and what is not, okay? We say here that there are different task force members' perspectives. We added some language based on a comment that some members are enthusiastic about this, so that should be noted. Others are cautious, but have some optimism. Others are skeptical, but have kind of that they can live with this, in other words, and we explain like why, right? And then, some of this language has been tweaked, but I don't wanna go there now. Then, some members think this is a kick the can down the road, right, and then it ends. What used to be there was the ideas that Jeff, you had put forward in the last meeting that were important to you. Okay, where we named stakeholders that, from an environmental perspective, named that dam removal was the best option, from a biodiversity perspective, where we quoted or pulled out some of the specific data from the survey, right, among other pieces. And there were concerns raised in the comments around that. I took a step back. Rachel and you and I had a conversation about this. And we were basically saying like, well, look, like this is the perspective of some task force members. If we're going to include this, we could give voice to this and just keep this in here, but we can't just have this one perspective. We would need to give equal space for people who have said, I don't agree with that, or I could also cherry pick data from the survey, right? And we need to give them an opportunity to say their piece. And we just were like, gosh, like, can we do that? Do we want to do that? Is that sort of back and forth gonna actually serve the group? Do we need this? And so the draft we sent back just removed it, but it highlighted this. We also, though, were like, we need to give them another option if this is important. So we came up with this alternative language where we kept intact what you had initially, and it was in the initial draft, and then basically used the comments that were critical of this, of that language, and built out a different statement, right? So that was coming from, it was us trying to put ourselves in stakeholder shoes, which is always a risky endeavor, right? So it should,
And also
but-
harkening back to other
and other comments that we've
and
heard.
other
Yeah.
reports that we've done, like I've done reports where the back section had the voices of the parties themselves.
Right.
And they
right,
got a chance to write their sentences,
Right,
to just give their perspectives. We heard their voices live,
Yeah.
they wrote it.
Yeah.
That means all of us would do that.
So that's a lot.
Yeah,
So-
it is.
I just have a question is. This language was in the initial draft.
Mhm.
Nobody in this group was throwing up on this at the last meeting.
During the meeting, you mean?
During the
Okay.
meeting,
Yeah.
or said there needs to be a significant change on this part. There was a vote that was overwhelmingly in favor of
Yeah,
all of it, subject to some minor wordsmithing. But deleting this big of a section is more than wordsmithing. So
Yeah.
that's where
Yeah.
I was
Yeah, no question.
completely,
Yeah.
completely caught up with a surprise.
Yeah,
After this group voted overwhelmingly for the general structure, the content, and nobody said is, I have a major issue over there.
I thought those, then we gave our responses with major issues when we said as a substantive, I would not vote for this. If this doesn't change, that was one of the options. We gave that feedback to Toby.
That was after that vote.
Not-
At that meeting, we got input from Jeff.
Yep.
Where he said he needs these things to get his arms around it. And nobody raised this. And
Well,
having,
once we read it-
after having a task force overwhelmingly voting for something,
Okay,
then going back, changing something, and then getting a email 48 hours before this meeting where these substantial sections are deleted. I was sorry, I got really emotional. Again, I am.
I wanted to say one thing, just in terms of how I want this group to think about this question, okay? Couple points. It's one thing to hear something spoken relatively quickly at a meeting, feel like it sounds okay, and then see it written on a piece of paper. So I just wanna be clear, like, we tried to very authentically capture what Jeff wrote, what Jeff said in the meeting, right? We were taking careful notes. I was not surprised when I saw the reactions to that, when people actually saw it. And that doesn't mean that those people were acting in bad faith. It doesn't mean they were intentionally being manipulative. It just means they didn't realize how they would react until they saw the text. I think it's also completely legitimate from where you're sitting, Sven, like, we did say this and we did vote on it and it matters to me.
But
Right.
this language was written before the last meeting. Everyone had time to, to read it and give input.
Ben, I have a question about that.
It was in there.
I have a question. This is an example from me. The only thing I remember about it, and I'm not sure if it's even in here, there was one part which I actually was surprised about, was in the text. Because I'm a member of the Concord Land Conservation Trust, and it says all 500 members are in favor of dam removal. I thought, wait a minute, I'm not, you know? And so how can it say that? And I'm a major contributor, you know, why would it say that? Now, I don't know where that was, maybe you mentioned that during the meeting. I don't know where it came from. So I didn't know how much of all that was written in or not. I believe what you told me, which I understand, is that it was said at the meeting, and I think it
Yeah, it
captured
was
what you have
said
said.
at the meeting. There was
No, I don't
nothing
remember.
written.
I'm
sent
throwing
around
up on the, not the stuff that was said in the meeting.
I think it's,
I'm
what's-
throwing
if
up
it
on
was in the
things.
document before,
Was it?
I don't know.
No,
That-
I
that's
thought-
what
I'm
Sven is
throwing
saying.
up, I'm
I will
throwing
respect
on,
that,
on a
'cause, yeah.
major section that was in the document written before.
Okay,
If all of us had time to read it, we voted on it.
we voted on that?
Then what are you,
No.
And then-
I'm concerned. Yeah, what are you talking
Not
about?
what the vote was on.
Yeah, the last meeting, we did not have a draft of the
We
final
didn't get a
report.
draft.
That's not
Yeah.
what the vote was on.
Yeah, the vote was that
The
we were
vote was
gonna
on the
take,
Structure.
we were gonna take the
Yeah.
proposal number one from the alternatives report. Take what we had said verbally at the meeting and integrate it into the report, into a new report. We then did that, we wrote all that up and sent that out after the last meeting. People reviewed it,
Right.
commented on it, and then we addressed it. So that
Mhm.
draft has never been, has never been discussed or voted on, the actual language in that draft. Just procedurally, that's,
That's what I thought.
understood
yeah,
too,
that's what.
I could be
that
wrong.
is-
That's what I thought.
I stand correct. But-
Yeah. So we did not have actual language that people had read in advance of last meeting's vote, that's the extent that.
But I would say,
Right.
if there is
Yeah.
any case where that is, I would love that to be brought to attention.
Yeah,
I
sure.
would like to know.
I mean,
Yeah.
I wrote it after the last meeting, so.
Yeah.
Based on what we heard in the meeting, right? And some direct correspondence from Jeff after the meeting, right?
All right, then I stand correct.
Um,
I'm glad that we
yeah,
clarified that.
yeah,
Jeff,
yeah.
Jeff has.
Jeff, go ahead, yeah.
What do you think?
But I just wanna say, that doesn't mean
No, no,
Right,
I can
no,
revisit,
yeah,
I
yeah,
understand, I understand.
So, yeah, I was surprised at that feedback, because I thought I was pretty clear expressing that.
Yeah.
So, took detailed notes, since we were covering a lot, and I was suggesting I sent some language to them just to sort of capture that, do with as you would. And that's in there, I thought that was captured in the discussion and the vote. But I also go back to the group protocol. It says the task force final report will capture the weight of the group's perspective on the final recommendation as needed, including capturing the key reasons why any who do not support the recommendation are not willing, able to sign on.
Yeah, so we can do that, yeah,
That's
Yeah.
what that language is trying to do.
okay.
And the idea, I mean, your proposal of having additional language to offer
Mhm.
additional voices. I don't have any
Mhm.
problem with that, but that's not language with people who don't support the outcome.
Okay.
So it's sort of,
Right,
anyways, that was in the group
Yeah.
protocols, and I thought that was
I see.
within bounds.
so I think actually there is maybe a little bit of a question, right, that. I think that protocols suggests, it might matter, I mean, I think if it is, there's. Right, the way it is framed right now, it's not entirely clear. Is this people who are not supporting this, or is this just the perspective of some task force
Right.
members? Right, and. We don't have a final document, right? So. Right now, some of those people that are in there could be people who are voting for this, right? Or end up be saying that they could live with it, right? So I think it's an open question in terms of how we want to handle like the people who are not voting for this,
Right.
right?
Yeah, I think-
And in general, we could do it with just the different voices piece and leave it as one report, right? That captures that perspective, but also the other perspective. And just leave it there, and we could even, so yeah, we can make that as vague or not in terms of who's saying what. Yeah. Liz, you wanna come in
I'll
here?
just echo that. I think
Yeah.
it's important to capture if people are not
Yeah.
endorsing it, why. I
Yeah.
think it's important.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah,
And I think it's, how do you feel, both of you really,
Yeah.
about how those perspectives are captured? Should it be in your own words? Should it be something that we translate into language, for you?
I thought the language that was in the first draft was
hmm
appropriate, others may have suggestions on it.
But what we're
I don't
saying
think,
is-
because I don't think it has to be one or the other. And I
Mhm.
don't think that there's any single way to do this. It's like the example that I gave is like that was huge, right? People wanted their voices, and so they could write a sentence or not. And, it doesn't mean that everyone has to write something, right? It's just people who disagree, the minority report or the disagreeing
Well, you also said,
statement can be in the document, and it's fine.
So what we're saying though is that once we take the vote, it's the people who are not voting for this direction get something that says, and the reason that so-and-so didn't vote for this is because, and you write whatever that sentence is gonna be. It's not like a whole section of the
No.
report.
Mhm.
Doesn't feel like it's a primary
No, it's
discussion.
a primary discussion.
It would
doesn't
be-
have to be a statement at all. They may not feel comfortable even saying it.
Yeah, right.
Right? Or maybe their disagreement's just so huge, they can't even come up with the words.
So let me ask a
to
question.
describe it.
Let me ask a question. Jeff, do you think it's worth, or any of us, to go back one more time and try to see if we can find a compromise language that we all can agree to? Or do you think it's just gonna be a minority report? I mean, last time you thought that was something, I didn't know where you were headed with that, but apparently this was something that you put in, you thought was acceptable at some point, at some level, right?
yeah,
Yeah, so I wonder if we look at it again briefly at the original and see if we can get to a point where it's acceptable to all of us. Is that worth it?
The language you mean?
Yeah.
The proposal.
The language in that
The
section.
language of the perspective.
You have it somewhere?
yeah, I'm pulling it up right now.
Cause I don't remember, honestly.
Okay, so this is what I did here, what I'm gonna pull up is, it has the original text that Jeff put in there, okay, that Jeff had requested, and then this also has like the other, some other members' text.
Can I
Okay,
make that larger, Toby?
yeah, sure. Okay. So, and this is again framed as part of the single report, right? Not as like, another option would be just appendix statement from so-and-so, right? And that would just be up to that person, right? But this is in the body of the report, so. Some members, well, maybe, should I read this out loud?
Yeah.
Okay. Some members believe it is important for this report to highlight elements of the task force's information gathering and deliberation that point to the benefits of dam removal. These members point to the written survey that task force members completed during the deliberation phase of their work, and note that recurring management was the top ranked option for 7 task force members. Dam removal was the top recommendation for 4 task force members, and dredging was not the top ranked option for any task force members. In addition, these members note that 1, task force members weighted ecological sustainability in their survey responses on average as the most important and relevant criterion for evaluating options for the pond system. And 2, the task force's interim report characterized dam removal and stream restoration as the most ecological beneficial solution at Warner's Pond. Specifically, the interim report noted a restored stream and wetland system as would be produced by removing the dam can claim to offer the most diversity of wildlife. These members also note that the task force heard from several environmental professionals and conservation organizations that dam removal and stream restoration would be best for the environment, specifically Joe Gould, Ecological Restoration Specialist, DER. We noted that DER prioritizes dam removal along with culverts, Kimberley bogs, and salt marshes because it's one of the very best things we can do for biodiversity. Stephen Maddox, this is names people. Ben Wetherill of ORS and ORS staff. ORS is a watershed organization representing over 300 Concord members. Concord Land Conservation Trust trustees, direct abutter to Warner's Pond and representing 500 households via public comment form. Wild and Scenic River Stewardship Council via public comment form and video, and there was a hyperlink to the video in the initial draft. Brian Windmiller, Director of Field Conservation, Zoo New England. David Swain, Professor of Field Ornithology. So that was that, right? then it would be helpful for me to read the other statement that we drafted.
Yes.
Some other members believe it is important for this report to highlight other elements of the task force's information gathering and deliberation that point to the benefits of dredging. These members suggest that the full survey results, including members' written explanations, provide important context about each member's perspective. For example, some members who supported dredging over the long term decided it was preferable to start with recurring management as a way to build alignment on a pathway forward. If future decision makers decide to use these survey results to guide their thinking about the future of the pond, they should review the results in their entirety. Likewise, the criteria weighting exercise in the survey was approached differently by different individual members, with an explicit understanding that the task force would not be engaging in a formal collective weighting exercise when making decisions. On the contrary, these members note that the task force was charged with considering the full range of criteria in the Envision Concord long-term plan, and all 5 of these criteria were fundamental to the task force's decision-making. In addition, the interim alternative under consideration report contains a range of data and observations about each of the different alternatives regarding their relationship to the history and character of the area, ecological impacts, recreational impacts, costs, and uncertainties, among other factors. Specific language across all sections of the report was carefully vetted and agreed to by task force members after substantial deliberation, and the interim report should be considered in its entirety during future decision-making. These members also note that the task force did not invite a pond management company representative to a task force meeting to discuss opportunities for more effective management actions, and that all voices of the public should be taken into account in evaluating options for the pond, not just those of selected environmental organizations, many of whose comments were never discussed or alluded to during task force meetings. These members suggest that the full public deliberation suggests there is significant public opposition to dam removal and overwhelming opposition among members of the public who regularly engage with the pond.
So I'd ask a question, that last part, you just, these last, is that in there? None of this is in there.
So these are points that were raised to me in
Right.
conversation, and that I have heard from these members on multiple occasions.
So why not put the whole thing in?
Well, so
Well,
this
that's
is
the
complicated.
alternative.
That's-
that-
Oh, yeah, that's the alternative.
That's the alternative. It's like,
put-
so how does that feel?
Yeah.
So put in, we'll put in
Oh,
the other comments and these comments.
But so this gets complicated, because if I were, like, it's nice that you wrote some
Yeah.
of this to them.
Yeah.
and I'm like,
You would do it
I want
differently.
information.
Yeah.
But now, should I write something about dredging? And all of the experts who've told us dredging was a really great solution for this pond, and it's a 100-year solution, and maybe actually the least expensive for the town over a 100-year duration. So should we put that in so that it's on record?
You already
that
have,
there's a
you already have
It's not
directed
in there.
information.
That's not in here.
Well, yeah, I think Vicky's saying she would say some different things. And yeah, I mean, I took what was in the comments
I
and what people had
understand.
explicitly said.
But I
to
didn't
me.
realize we could come back afterwards and write more to you, so I didn't do that, yeah.
Yeah, that's
I
the
think,
challenge. we have
I think your phone is smaller, but
Yeah,
David has.
Yeah.
We could put less in there.
yeah.
You know, one of the things I think about is how valuable the Envision Concord was to us
Right.
as a
Mhm.
document. And that's part of what I thought is the value add that we're delivering to someone who's looking at this 5 years from now, God forbid, 10 years from now.
Yeah.
But they benefit, and I would love them to have, what's the harm? And I mean, I know it's extra work, but if you wanna
Mhm.
put
Right.
it in there
Yeah.
and have that extra information, that doesn't seem like doing any harm. It might help someone in the future.
What if we were to do this as I always hesitate to like put my own ideas out there. but here we
Go
go.
ahead.
You know, if this feels like okay, like as a reflection of the two sides, we could do this. We put this in the body of the text. Any other task force member who wants to say anything else, we can basically have a spot in the appendix where we say, it was anyone, you send us what you want.
Why
It'll
wouldn't
be
all the
associated with you.
Toby, why wouldn't all the alternatives, visions or opinions be an appendix? Like, we could have a whole appendix that say other viewpoints or alternatives to this, or disagreements with what you've read above, because
Sure.
this,
I mean, what we could do, another option, Vicky, is we could take this section,
yeah.
right? And so at the end of what's currently in the text, say like, please see appendix, whatever, for
For different
additional task, for
Yeah.
specifics on task force members' perspectives.
Yeah.
We could put this text in here or
Yeah, and it's
not,
entirety, yeah.
right? In its entirety, we could put this text in here, give other members a chance to say whatever you want.
Yeah.
On top of this, I think that's all fine.
So where would this end above? In other words, above this, what would the actual final line B of the document report.
Yeah.
Let's assume this is for minutes, but let's assume this is
You
a.
think this is so this could be in the body, we're saying, assuming this is in the
No,
body.
assume at the moment that this is an appendix.
Ah,
So where does our actual document end?
okay, yeah, so I'll go back to the document, it would be like, we would say, right now, it does have this task force members, other perspectives and kind of summarize.
Yeah, but
some
go
of
above that, go
Yeah.
above
Right.
that.
So this is still the body.
I
right?
understand, I understand, but stop right there.
Yeah, ideas considered but not.
Oh, up
recommended.
above that, up above that. So this is where it would end on costs.
Well, I think.
No, no.
No, ideas
No.
considered but not
Considered, not
recommended. It would end.
Oh, I see, it end there.
Additional-
It would end there.
Additional perspectives.
Would go into an appendix, so you're looking
Appendix.
like what's the.
Yeah, I get it.
I think we would wanna keep the acknowledgement.
The acknowledgements.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
Right, I mean, to me, we could keep some portion of this in.
I
the
think
thing and
that's
exclude
actually
it all.
not a bad idea to put it all in an appendix.
I think a high level summary with a high level summary with a point to the appendix makes sense.
Yeah.
It'd be weird, just like a
you can't just.
throw up
interrupt.
sentence.
Right.
Yeah, no.
So keep what's in the current text?
No.
No,
No?
a very
They do a
short
very
executive
short,
summary,
high level.
that there were
summary.
opposing views or something. like
So
that.
in our recommendations, talking about
Yeah.
different perspectives regarding.
Right.
And we're likely to discuss other issues,
Mhm.
like for,
Please see
please see appendix for details.
For
Yeah.
more commentary.
Right, and are we
Right.
keeping the 500 people on the conservation land?
You
Well,
could almost keep the first sentence.
I draw that from, I mean, we were charged with looking at the comments.
And then say,
Yeah.
the first sentence, and then say for additional
Mhm.
feedback and comments,
Mhm.
look at the appendix
Right.
that has additional task force member perspectives and.
Right.
Right,
I think
okay.
one thing to bear in mind in these kinds of in the realm of commentary that follows the report is to think about whether you want it to be in the realm of comments and sort of perspectives and opinions, or do you want it to have the same sort of references that the report itself
in this
does?
one, I would say, you wanna say, please read appendix A. Or whatever it is, because this is too significant to just drop. That's what I would say. This isn't just anybody, I mean, my own personal opinion.
Mhm.
Yeah, and as I discussed this at our last meeting, the intent here was to elevate to NRC information that we
Yeah.
heard.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Rachel and Toby can handle what you receive in terms of this appendix, but,
Mhm.
I don't know, it seems like evidence-based.
Mhm.
That's what I'm at, that's
sort
that's
of a
what I'm at.
perspective
Is this pure opinion, or are the citations that people are giving about who they talked to and what they said gonna be referenced in a way so that someone reading it could be like, oh, it was this person? I could call them up and I could ask them what they.
I don't
you know,
understand, but I don't get that, honestly.
Jeez, yeah, I wouldn't wanna go that route, but unless that's something that individual people would like to do, that's
I
fine.
think it makes it stronger, but if it's individuals' perspectives, it's your perspective, right? I mean, that's.
Right,
What I wanna know is, if this section was at the end, if a general statement was made about there was different perspectives in the committee, that it was not unanimous, whatever, it doesn't matter. But that well, I would hope we'd say we came to some sort of consensus on the document. And then at the bottom of that, it says, and then please reference see the first appendix, which would list these items, this important discussion that that it's been written, the part that Jeff has had, the next part about the others. And if you wanted, sure, go ahead, but I'm afraid it's gonna start to water it down, to be honest. Vicky, I think you got enough said, you already got enough said in this. I think, in my opinion, put these two as being a very important appendix, right at the end of the document. I would feel, that makes a lot of sense to me. I don't know how you feel about this, and what I wanna know, because if we're going through this whole trouble, is whether there's gonna be another, still strong opposition, but you can't tell me that yet, I know.
You guys
Holding his card close to his chest.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody has had to compromise on this. I mean, that's the nature of this whole thing.
All right. All right, so here's where I think we are right now, okay?
Yeah, I used to just in summer, have a high level summary and put it in the appendix.
Yeah. I think there's two things that I would pull out of both the section that's in the current second draft and the alternatives part that got deleted, which I think are important things to add into this additional perspectives. One is the very last sentence of that first paragraph that starts, some members are influenced by the expectation that Warner's Pond is very likely to be removed at some point in the future. I think that that's an important, sort of marker to say, we do recognize that this is a man-made structure, and over the long arc of history, it's, we are fighting, choosing to try to keep something that should be temporary. And so I think that's important to keep in the main body of the document. I also very much like the point in the alternative approach. It's the end of the last sentence in the first paragraph on the second page of it. In addition to the interim alternatives under consideration report contains a range of data and observations about each of the different alternatives regarding their relationship to the history and character of the area, etc. Specific language in all sections was carefully vetted and agreed to, and the interim report should be considered in its entirety during future decision making. I think that those are kind of important things to leave as markers that say, we chose this particular path at this point in time because we think that there might be benefits down there. But when it comes time at that 5-year mark or whenever it is to actually rethink this again, it would be worth it to go back and look at the detailed work that was done on removal and dredging and things, because we've focused a lot on the relative challenges and shortcomings that adaptive management may have. I think if we picked either of the other two alternatives and tried to, come up with a final report around that, we would have had different but parallel discussions about the relative strengths and weaknesses of those. So, and I think the closest we got to building them all out was in that interim report. And that's a useful thing to leave a marker about in the main report.
So, yeah, let me, I think that there,
So those are the pieces that I wouldn't relegate to anything. This is what I'm saying.
okay.
Can you share again, Toby?
Yeah, I will, just say, I'm gonna get this written.
Or I had the benefit of having my own copies of these open.
I think it's time for more cupcakes, frankly.
Definitely didn't.
I knew it.
Oh, he's going for the health.
Yeah, he is.
Well, I got dessert coming.
Okay, so let me share my screen. So let me show you what I've done, and I think there've been a lot of different ideas about how to handle this. And I'm just trying to think where I think we're landing. So right now, first of all, I just want to say there's a sentence in here to your point a minute ago, Mark, naming that, all the information collected and reported should be preserved, right? And I just added, in future decision makers should consult the full alternatives under consideration report when evaluating options moving forward, right? Or when evaluating option, yeah, that's fine. Right. Just like this. So I just tried to make sure that was captured somewhere not in the appendix. Okay, and then what I've done here is I have a very brief section that says additional task force members' perspectives and expectations. It has that first sentence, and then it says, for details on these different perspectives, please see Appendix H. So all of that stuff, even the stuff that was less objectionable to the group, including, importantly, Mark, your piece is now in the appendix, right? The piece around the the length, the fact that some people think that the pond, the dam could at some point go, right? And I just would know, like, I just say there were a lot of comments on that, from different members. So there might be pushback on keeping that in the body, but, so anyway, we can talk about that.
And I
But,
can
yeah.
just say too, I feel like we've done so much work that this
Mhm.
report could be 50 pages long.
Yeah.
But to me, it's not supposed to only be a report, it's supposed to be a recommendation to the NRC, and
Mhm.
so I keep going back to like, what are we doing? Can it be shorter? And can it be a recommendation to the NRC with all the other information elsewhere? So that it's a
Keeping it
pure
concise.
recommendation to the
Yeah.
NRC, because we could just keep talking and I could write you a
Yeah.
judging section, which
Yeah.
apparently I'm gonna do, and somebody else could write something else, and we could just add more text.
Mhm.
But it's supposed to be a recommendation to the NRC. Our reports and all of our findings are still alive. Like, we're not
Mhm.
supposed to be culminating all that in here. I didn't think we were.
Okay,
It is
Yeah,
supposed to be a
yeah.
culmination of everything we learned over the past 16
no,
months.
it's not, right? That's
The
why, that's
recommendation
partly why
to the
we're
NRC.
referring them to the alternatives
Right.
report, right?
And to the
Yeah.
appendix or whatever.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
to me, it should be shorter and sweeter and
Yeah.
easier for people to understand what we're recommending.
Yeah, great. So
Wow.
right now, like, as I just refashioned the draft, it has a very brief introduction saying there are additional perspectives. It then goes to the appendix. The appendix has all that text, so some people are enthusiastic, others are, you know, cautiously optimistic, some are skeptical. Some people think this is kicking the can down the road. Some members want to highlight the benefits of dam removal, and all of that. Right, some members want to highlight the benefits of dredging, right, and all of that. Included in that is the full thing about, you know, consult all the alternatives report, but that's also named earlier, right? And because that is both a rebuttal to the previous point
Right.
and also above. And then I think we could decide to leave it here. If anyone wants additional individual things and to adjust the language, you know, I think we could have, you know, individual task force member notes as a subsection here, and you can send it in and we'll just paste it in there if that's what people want. If you think this is good enough, we can just leave it.
How many pages is it?
Well, including appendices, it's 35.
Without the.
Without the appendices, it's quite short. It is now 8 pages, 9 pages. Yeah. So not bad. Maybe we'll get to 8 once we accept those red lines. We'll see. Well, let me just ask, are people comfortable with what I just said? Yeah. Are people comfortable just leaving it? You're
I
having
need
face.
to- I
Yeah.
need to think on it more. I can't say right now. And it's,
All
I need
right.
to sit with it a little, which means let's continue on. And I
Okay,
will
Liz,
stew in the
like,
background.
I'm just gonna run it. Yeah,
I'm with
that-
you.
yeah, I hear you. All right.
Have another cupcake.
I definitely need a cup. Because I'm running short on sugar.
Yeah.
All right. So those are the big issues we wanted to address.
All right.
Okay. I want to now go back to the beginning. I think, in good news, I think those are the big substantive issues. I think most of the rest of this is like little, like, words, right? I mean, words matter.
That's what you're doing all the whole time. That's right. Go ahead. Yeah.
But
Um,
hopefully these are smaller
I agree.
issues and it's just,
Yeah.
you know, move through quickly, relatively quickly.
Okay, so I'm gonna go through, I'm just gonna pause on I'm gonna name, so what's in the draft, I'm gonna pause on the comment. Because we tried to be very careful to just note a comment when it felt like something someone might wanna talk about. If I'm going through this and you're like, hey, you skipped it, I wanna talk about this, let me know, this is the time for that. Okay, so at the top, there was a request for executive summary. One of the benefits of this is it puts the basic, clear statement of our recommendations on page 1. So we did that. I imagine everyone's okay with that, but if not, speak now or forever hold your peace. We also, based on a very, in my opinion, helpful and just clarifying suggestion by one of our co-chairs, just made the second bullet here more concise than in the draft that you saw, and also clarifies the role of the committee, right? That we are recommending convening the Warner's Pond Watershed Management Committee that, among other duties listed below, right, would develop the adaptive management plan that is to be recommended to the NRC. Okay,
I'm green blind.
Huh, huh.
Oh my
What
God.
do you see instead? Do you see,
This is some low
You can't
shade
distinguish-
of gray, I can
you can't
barely, so
distinguish,
that's my,
right.
that's.
that's not a bad, necessarily a
Yeah.
bad thing.
Yeah.
Can you read that?
Can you read it?
Red line I see.
Red light, the green light, I.
Yeah, no, I know, that's why it is, but that's why it is order.
It's in order, yeah.
But actually 12% of the male population have.
Yeah.
That's interesting. I don't know.
Can you see
Um,
that though, Sven?
Yeah, I see it as a very light gray.
It's that he can't distinguish the, you know, the
All right, I'm
highlight.
gonna try to make this red.
No, it's if you make it larger like this, I can
Okay.
somehow realize what's comes. That's
Okay, well,
fine.
now I don't know
Just
how to
close that thing. Now I can't see it too. Nobody can.
Oh my God, all right, good, escape,
Okay.
Oh, no.
Reverse.
Undo.
Undo.
The top.
Stop. No.
No.
No, this way.
That's all, we're good. All right.
Great.
Google Doc.
Okay, all right, so anyway, I don't know that I can fix the green, okay, but take a look here, this is just for conciseness, that's all. Right,
Is that big enough? I'm here, seriously. Is that big enough for you, Sven? Can you see this seriously?
Yeah, it's tough, but.
so let me just read it, recommendation 2. Convening of a standing multi-stakeholder Warner's Pond Management Committee that among other duties is listed below would develop the adaptive management plan that is to be recommended to the NRC. And stop, but what we've deleted is, you know,
Report and make.
clearly defined mission and charge, representation from all departments, we just got rid of that, and that's in the body, all right? Okay, I'm gonna move on. There was a suggestion that we put a little bit of like the lead up, a history, into this. We tried to be just very basic around what was included, basically reflecting the bullets that we presented to the public and that everyone was okay with, when we did our public meeting. So it just names sort of that since the 90s, town has been exploring how to manage the pond and key milestones along the way. And then the lead up to the convening of the committee. Okay, so that's that. Again, pause me if you want to talk about any of this. We tweaked this opening section here to make sure we're explicitly mentioning Envision Concord as part of our charge and hewing more closely to the specific language of the charge based on a comment. Here, we tweaked some of this language just to make it clearer around the final vote, what we actually voted for last week. The specifics are now in a footnote. We had previously called it a framework, but actually we had a very specific vote. So that's named now. We explained kind of the voting of at the last meeting and then the voting at this meeting. Okay, moving on, we now have the 3 recommendations. Okay, so one of the comments was around naming this a watershed management committee. We didn't make that edit, and I think this was the name that had been in Bill's proposal.
I don't care either way.
Yeah, I mean, if someone feels strongly about that, I think the purpose was just to mention that one of the goals of the committee is to
Still trying to
work
reach
on
out to the.
with other towns in the watershed, so. If someone feels strongly about that, we can talk about it. Then an addition here that we just talked about before, where that the committee is gonna, with the help of a pond management consultant, right, this is they're gonna be working, or consultant,
Right, we
this is
just
the
worked
language we
out,
just worked out.
Yeah.
Okay. Moving down to the adaptive management plan recommendation. This is a edit from the co-chairs that is not in the draft that you previously saw. That is designed to clarify the relationship between the NRC and the committee. So it
We
says,
didn't say that above. We didn't say that the task force recommends that NRC create a watershed.
we
did, yeah.
did, this is
Do you have
just,
to say it again?
You'll see why. This is about the plan itself.
all right, so this is talking about the plan, okay? So recommendation number 1 was preparation and implementation of an adaptive management plan.
Okay.
Here we're saying the task force recommends that the NRC create a watershed management committee that would develop and implement an adaptive management plan for the pond. Okay, the adaptive management plan should include the following elements. So we're just trying to be very clear about the relationships every time we mention this, that's all.
Toby,
Yeah,
scrolling up, that's
Mhm.
right. Just consistency, whatever way we go, the top line of this task force recommends. We use Warner's Pond Management Committee, and above it's still Warner's Pond Watershed, so.
yeah.
No, y'all might tell me, I like to ask you, what do you think, one or the other, doesn't matter, what do you think? Watershed or
I like one.
like watershed, yeah, okay,
Okay,
Is that what it was called though, when we started this?
Who knows?
Name?
Ring
It was a
them.
pond, right? We were slated to live in the pond.
Yeah.
So isn't one of the charges to just like work with other towns and
yeah,
in
Yeah.
the watershed?
Is it,
That's
is
why.
it the chart?
are we gonna
I thought-
argue
I thought
about this,
that's
we
right.
argue about watershed, are we gonna let,
No,
are
I
we gonna let this go?
haven't seen that in the list of responsibilities.
It
It's to
is.
coordinate
Yeah.
with other towns in the
Right, but-
watershed.
But when you put it in the name, it makes it seem like we're responsible for the watershed.
Not, you can't be, you're responsible for Concord's part of the watershed,
Yes.
which includes a
Isn't
few
that the-
hundred, would you let this go? I really.
I want it just to be, so that 5 years from now, none of us are there. Are they gonna be like, this is a watershed management group?
I see.
And
Yeah,
they're gonna be
I
like,
don't think
oh,
they're gonna
wow,
look at
that's
the
a big,
charge.
that's a big responsibility.
And the
Well, it says
specifics,
watershed.
but I don't think they would look at the specifics, things that they're tasked for with.
Is that clear?
We can read.
I mean, I think you guys go wherever you want, I don't
All right.
think,
Okay,
yeah, I mean, I think Vicky, your
Remember,
point,
it's up
is
to
it might be, it isn't really managing the watershed.
No.
Yeah.
Right.
But if the group if the committee is, if part of what the adaptive management plan is focused on managing the watershed, then.
you cannot manage beyond your own boundaries. Yeah, and so, but you could try to reach out to other towns and see what they're
Yeah.
doing, see if they can
That
help.
later, which I think was good. It does say that we're gonna reach out
I see,
and participate with other towns and their
Yeah.
watershed, so that's a clear task.
yeah,
But it's
right,
not
I mean, I would say
responsibility.
when you say the watershed management committee, that does seem a little bit,
All right,
maybe
yeah.
confusing,
Sure,
yeah,
just change.
actually, yeah,
All right.
all right,
So watershed's coming out.
So
watershed's coming out,
Okay.
okay, Vicky.
All right, okay.
All right, yeah,
Less words.
yeah, let me,
Less letters.
Get down to 8 pages.
I know.
yeah, that's
right.
gonna bring us down, all
Yeah.
right, I'm just gonna quickly double check, but maybe I'll do that after.
Yeah,
Write me a note, I need to make sure watershed is gone.
Yeah,
Good.
I am, I'm writing that right now.
Okay. And it does say pond and watershed here, so.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
fine.
Yeah.
Okay, okay, all of this is the same. We spoke about in addition here, noting that the goals and metrics should also include recreational and other components.
Yes.
Okay, we're naming the adaptive methodology, right, that it should have progress reports and updates at least every year. There was a request that we name some of the possible management approaches in one of the comments, so that's been added. We've adjusted, this is about the timeline, we adjusted that. This bullet, we had a long discussion about the study design and the role of the consultants. That's exactly what we spoke about. We have language here about the budget. There were some comments that we used to refine this bullet. Basically, the relationship between CPC funds. We have an appendix that details that, the committee should look into what funds are available, what could be deployed for what, right? So that's clarified in the appendix. Again, pause me at all at any point. We have the bullet here about the comprehensive reevaluation to decision-making process. Okay, this is a little bit different from the draft that you all saw, so we might need a pause here.
Toby,
Okay.
can you hit Zoom a couple times?
Yeah, okay. Okay, so this bullet, oops. So let me read you the bullet. Okay, this is talking about so the initial bullet, okay, this was a edit proposed by our co-chairs, said that we'd have a comprehensive reevaluation decision-making process. Basically, about whether it's achieving its goals or whether we need a different, more capital-intensive long-term approach, both at the end of the 5-year period and anytime significant dam-related infrastructure is being considered, right? Such as we have examples. Okay, now the bullet says, and I think the purpose of this co-chair who suggested this clarify, I think the idea is we talk about the 5-year trigger above, so we don't need to say it again here, maybe the idea, but it just says a comprehensive reevaluation decision-making process to determine if adaptive management is achieving its stated goals when a capital intensive
Yeah.
long-term approach is being considered.
So if,
E.g. Fish Passage major dam repairs a pumping system, but I mean, I'm just curious, why would we not also say like dredging?
you could
or
say
dam
dredging,
removal?
I hadn't thought about
Right.
dredging, you put that in.
Yeah,
The notion was, of course, if we have a major capital investment, we should think about whether whether it's worth investing or
Mhm.
not, or whether,
Right.
has it been successful up to this point?
right, right.
Yeah, put dredging into.
So we could add dredging and dam removal, but I'm not gonna be.
Yeah, oh, yeah, yeah.
Right, right. Okay. And I think, I mean, I just wanna be clear, looking through this, we're clear about that there's a 5-year process. 5-year,
5-year implementation above, is that the one, the bullet?
Yeah, there it is, under 32, it says 2032.
Correct.
That's what you
Update.
No later than 20.
fixed before, right?
okay. Great.
It starts at study design and ends no later than 20.
Okay. All right, are we okay to continue?
So-
Okay. Um. All right, so we tried to clarify these roles. This is all similar. We talked about this bullet, the additional task. Okay, representation. This was something that people had comments about. I think we also heard comments from Sven on this. So right now, right, it says representation from all town departments involved with implementing elements of the plan, including the NRC, the Concord Recreational Commission, the Concord Public Works Commission, as well as other Concord resident groups with a specific interest in the future of the pond system, such as Friends of Warner's Pond, nonprofit organizations with expertise on local waterways and water resource ecology, Concord Scout House and the scouting community, and the West Concord Advisory Committee, plus some number of other members with relevant expertise. We've deleted this sentence here about each town department bringing its relevant expertise. It just, I think, felt superfluous.
Right.
I think I'd get rid of the word all in the first line, representation from all town departments. Just,
And do we want to get rid of
Or change it to
CTW? Or say something else like, and if and when needed?
I would just get rid of it
Okay.
personally. I mean, we can always reach out to DPW.
And they're, because they're included in a town, as a town department, right?
And at some point, we have this annual or semi-annual meeting and they'll be invited, et cetera, to be part of it.
Right.
I think there's a structural difference between having a seat by charter and says having a seat by being asked for different things and
Exactly.
opinion.
That's it.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
so there's no need to have a seat by charter.
Right.
Okay,
I just
yeah,
have
let-
a question we
yeah.
had about it is it too big of a group? Because we all know our big groups can be so unwieldy and hard to move stuff forward and. You know, I have a PR consultant who says 5 at the most. And they're trying to make us
Mhm.
very diligent. It's like, you can't have more 5 people on any of your committees with me. And for a reason. And so I just wonder if we're setting ourselves up for failure by saying we're gonna have like 10 people meeting every
Mhm.
month.
But do we say, how many people do we say? Do we have a number? We don't have a number. do we?
Well, if you
No.
count just the name,
Counting.
1, 2, 3, 4,
5.
5, 6, then other members.
And that's no residents, that's just
Yeah,
Oh, we might be.
those departments.
no, there are
No.
2 departments and then 4 specifically named types of residents, plus some other number with
Right.
relevant
Right.
expertise.
relevant.
Yeah.
It is. What about if you had like a small group of people, not to change things,
Don't
but
change it, yeah.
but a small group of people, right, say 5, for instance, and then that's monthly. And then maybe quarterly or every 6 months, meet with the other relevant groups. You know, touch base with the recreation department, touch base with someone from
Yeah.
Department of Public Works. you know, touch, but have a meeting. And say, okay, this is where we're at, this is what we're doing, how does it affect you, and you? And
Yeah.
get feedback in that way, instead of them coming to every single meeting,
Talking
it's
to the
more of a.
management consultant and.
Right.
Or looking at reports.
Or what if we, or what if you just took out? Who we're putting, and just say, let the NRC decide.
Let it, and I see this.
So you can change it from representation to liaison.
That would be
Yeah.
better.
That's a good idea.
And then, so they have the responsibility in the structure to create a liaison
Mm.
role. And that could be, you know, a 5-person group that each has some responsibilities for specific stakeholders. Whether it's, you know, outside citizens groups or other departments, or that could be part of the role of the members of the group to do that.
That would make it a smaller, more concise
Right.
group.
Yeah, and it's more of a coordinating function than it.
So liaison then for all, so
For any,
Right.
I would change it to, instead of representation from all the town departments, I would change it to liaison
liaison.
Yeah,
with any town department involved in,
That's true. Yeah.
yeah.
so it's a
and
small
go
group
on.
with
As
liaisons.
well as other groups with
Yes.
specific interests
Yeah,
and
That's good.
Would it be a
plus some
separate-
number of other, you know, then.
would it be a separate responsibility that the committee is responsible for, but just like have it a separate bullet point than the makeup of the committee?
well, like you said, each person within the committee would have.
Would have a
Would have a
portfolio
liaison, so
for
they
their,
have to
yeah.
deal with a couple of different.
So then when you get down to the plus the number of members, part of you could drop them, as long as you what you do.
Okay, so let me just make sure I'm getting this right. So the committee should liaison with.
Would
Right.
include the following elements, you know, yeah, or,
Well, no, I think we were saying that those departments should assign a liaison that would meet periodically with this core group.
Okay, the committee should assign, I'm just trying to think, well, how do you
The
say this?
departments would have liaisons who would meet with this group on it periodically, whether we're saying it's quarterly, biannually, or whatever. it
No.
is.
Did we say that,
No,
or did we
no.
say that
No.
we would have like a core group?
Yes.
And they would have like different groups that they were responsible for,
Yes.
so.
Oh,
Say,
okay.
would
how
you
the
be,
liaison
you'd be
works.
responsible for dealing with the Department of Public
I
Works
see,
and
I see,
Recreation,
I see, I see.
making sure.
Oh, I heard something
No,
different from
no.
Mark, where the departments would assign a liaison, but that's different. Okay.
It was I think it was the other way around, right?
yeah, I was really suggesting that the management group would
Liaison.
have liaison responsibilities to bring
Yes.
in,
I like that better.
yeah. Cause that gives them
Yeah.
something to do and then these.
Not that it had nothing
There's
to
nothing-
do.
No, but it really, you
But
know,
that
it creates, yeah, they need to be proactively coordinating this stuff.
So right now it says liaison responsibilities with any town departments involved with implementing elements of the plan.
Then you can
Right.
include Concord Public Works Commission.
Right.
Okay. Okay, okay.
I don't know what we do about that.
Including NRC, the Concord Recreational Commission, the Concord Public Works Commission, as well as other Concord resident groups with a special interest in the future of the pond. Et cetera.
Now, the NRC is gonna want to say about this, you know, they're gonna wanna think about who they're putting on and how they're gonna do it,
Right,
just to say that, which makes sense. I would say give them flexibility to say, I don't think we have any numbers there, 5 to 7 members, or something like
Mhm.
that.
Yes, I think that we should.
Yeah,
Did we say 5 to 7 members with membership and or liaison
I think
responsibilities?
just say the NRC should appoint a committee of 5 to 7 members,
Period.
and then let them work out all the liaisons.
Mhm.
Yeah, and you
You
can
can
even
say
put that
it.
in the very start, you can say the task force recommends that the NRC convene a multi-stakeholder body of 5 to 7 members. And then you have it.
Mhm.
Right,
Yeah, there you go.
David has his hand up too.
I've so appreciated the facilitation we've had from your group. Are we suggesting that a facilitator is among those 7? Or that there's an 8th person
Oh,
who's a facilitator, whether they're
it's a,
in the town,
yeah,
you know, or a consulting firm?
I think the consulting
But I
firm
think
is-
there's
is
a
over
great
above.
role for someone whose job is just facilitating the committee.
Oh, no,
And I just-
Shared, right?
no, I don't think so.
Just like,
Yeah.
That's the
having
rule of the
chair,
chair.
Yeah, that's the rule.
Yeah.
Any-
And,
Because
and
it's a smaller group too, David, right? That would have.
So they'd be
respons-
responsible for all the minutes and all
Yes.
this.
Like
Yeah.
any, like any other committee.
Committee,
Yeah.
welcome to.
Sign me up.
Alright, so
Sign somebody.
the task force recommends the NRC convene a
That's
multi-stakeholder body of 5 to 7 members, including David, who will be responsible for.
I don't see you
typing.
Alright, so right now, just to be clear, we say multi-stakeholder body of 5 to 7 members. Okay, then later on, we say liaison responsibilities with any town departments. Okay?
Yeah.
Alright,
Good.
and so we're not saying representation, saying
No,
liaison.
that's-
Okay.
Right.
Sign.
Okay, that's a good catch. All right, is there anything else? I mean, this was a edit to say Concord resident groups. We took out ors and made this more broad. Jeff, I think you told me you actually were fine with that, right? So, yeah. Okay. So,
Question for
Yeah.
Delia, maybe, do subcommittees like trails or CR committee, do they have term limits or people want
They
to
do.
be asked if they stay with them?
But, the way that, those are set up, they can continue to serve beyond their 2-term. So we do have members that have been.
People are
on for
interested,
2 years.
yeah.
We're having an active discussion at the select board about APP 10 and whether or not 2 terms is a good rule of thumb, considering, I mean, it's the rare committee that's oversubscribed and a lot that are under, and so whether maybe we should relax that to 3 terms, or, you know, or something like that, so your input is welcome.
As you said, you'd hate to lose institutional knowledge.
Exactly.
Yeah, something.
Or lose people and have nobody left.
Yeah,
Yeah.
people want to keep serving.
Yep.
I think this will be the tricky part here, given 2 terms are 6 years.
Yeah.
And it could happen that suddenly in the final year, you're losing all members at
Yeah.
once.
you probably you would probably
You have
stagger.
to stagger,
Yeah.
so that's
Fair point.
important for the NRC
Yeah, to know,
to think about, they have to stagger right from the
Yeah.
beginning.
yeah, they would have to.
Say-
Yeah,
maybe
that's-
5 years.
You don't have to say that. The NRC knows it, they know that, people know that.
All right, let me keep going. All right. We have the term is 5 years. We named the consultant. Right, right, so I'm just saying after the 5-year timeline, because that's defined above. Or after a 5-year timeline. Okay, then this new bullet about it considering the broader pond system. Right, a larger meeting with stakeholders. Okay, ongoing efforts to support community involvement, that's all relatively unchanged, if not, yeah, from the first draft.
Wait, can we just go back up?
Mhm.
Why do we need to have the bullet about the external support that's all laid out already?
Where's that?
Or which one are you talking about?
The one that you just kind
Oh,
of,
as noted,
because that's all stuff that was noted above. So just and to get to the 8 pages, like, I just don't know why we have that bullet there.
Yeah, it's good, okay, there's all redundancy.
It is just a little.
Yeah, so she's saying is that repetitive?
Yeah, I don't see anything new in that, I guess is what I'm saying.
Okay.
Go Liz.
Keep it up, Liz.
got it, love it, Liz, all right.
Right, because we do have that all spelled out.
Yes,
That's
yeah.
great.
Yeah, that's right.
I'm not deleting something that I think is, okay.
Seeing double.
That's right, after a while, that's
All
true.
right. Okay, so now specific actions. And they're, tiny little edits. This is basically unchanged.
Did we fix the Kenny Dunn Square?
Yes.
yeah.
Yes, I
Park
did.
thing?
Yeah, so do we wanna say the Pocket Park or do we wanna say Kenny Dunn
They're
Square?
two
You guys-
different-
I think the pocket park is what would,
Okay.
within the dam removal group, when we
Yeah.
were talking about it, we were discussing the pocket park. Kenny Dunn Square, you will kill yourself trying to get there. So,
You were trying to get to the pocket park too.
yeah, that's, yeah, well, we can like hop over here, but I don't know.
Not any, yeah.
Oh, no, we couldn't, we had
It
to hop
didn't
over and
track.
then swim over the pond, never mind.
So it's the Pocket Park. All right, then. So then this sentence was tweaked in the revisions. Right, these improvements should be designed in a manner that ensures a utility regardless of the long-term future of the pond system. I.e., they should assume both dam removal and dredging remain options. Unless there is a clear decision. Okay. Okay, then we move into this key considerations section here. We've had some edits, just wordsmithing, you know, we say Warner's Pond is cherished by many Concord residents. Right, there were some tweaks to the language here. That folks felt was important to make sure it's specific and accurate.
I have a language question.
Great.
Is it natural eutrophication? Eutrophication, if it's in an impoundment? For the first sentence, second sentence, the pond has experienced a natural eutrophication process due to the buildup of sediments and nutrients over time. Cause to me, that reads like. Just
Right,
that, it had,
right.
it's nothing to do with the dam, it's just natural.
Mhm. Anyone
Well,
have a response on that?
I
You know, it's knowledgeable.
I would say it's still natural in that it's not human. It's
That's
not
fair.
humans going in and
That's right.
putting in sewage or,
Okay.
so the action, the biological action that's happening, is happening whether the dam is there or not.
Mhm.
Okay.
It might be accelerated or not, but.
Wait,
at the
Yes,
end,
no,
will-
that has,
right?
no,
So
eutrophication
It's
is,
a byproduct of
It's a-
presence of.
yes,
But
yes.
but isn't it a natural occurrence in water bodies? In general.
When you create a
impoundments.
shallow
Mhm.
Yeah, right.
environment and you
Right.
sequester nutrients there,
Yes.
yes,
Yeah,
that will
so-
help.
but the nutrients are not natural in that
But you
case.
can't say that it's,
I think,
like, I guess what I'm saying is that the way that it's described, I think is fair.
I think you just take out natural.
Yeah, I
Just
think
take out
it's
that.
technically right, but the spirit of it doesn't feel right.
Yeah.
Okay.
All
Is it-
weeds are natural,
Yeah.
you know,
What?
all weeds are natural.
It's been, it's edited. It's gone. Natural has been left out. Okay, so little minor edit that from the draft you saw, a wetland with a potential channel passing through it, if eutrophication continues. We added language here around, you know, various tweaks that are in the draft that you all have seen, so if anyone wants me to stop, just let me know. Okay. This is all, I think, just some, you know, if there were red lines, they were just, you know, minor corrections. Okay. Then we have the adaptive management, language on the adaptive management timeline and triggers. We say this thing about beginning at the time of approval, this is what we talked about. Beginning at the time of approval of the study design and ending no later than 2032. Okay. Right, so this is about timeline, just to be your comment, which we talked about. We note that, you know, long-term degradation is not what we want, right? And if it's not working, we should look at our task force work, look at the task force work. We could, yeah, okay, we could add, we could name the alternative analysis report. If we want to address Mark, or we can move on, you're already exhausted.
Yeah.
Yeah. Look at that typing line, but it was, all right, okay. All right, okay, so David, we are so close to the end, folks, okay?
Another cupcake.
Yeah, we're so close. David had named, so there have been questions, right, what are we including here, right? Anytime a significant infrastructure is contemplated, right? Fish passage, dam repairs. We want to put a quantity on that or just say major dam repairs?
Didn't we already we just covered languages almost exactly the
Yeah,
same.
yeah, just don't get up.
Times,
Yeah,
Major is fine.
okay,
Yeah, I think,
okay.
but should we take it out if it's on?
Yeah, where is the other?
I think.
Well, this is,
sometimes
that was in the
it's
recommendations. This is for the
Oh.
explanation of
Okay.
them, so
Yeah.
that's why it's a little
It's the
repetitive.
meat.
So
Yeah.
where does it say major right now?
There's major dam repair, so anytime a significant investment in dam-related infrastructure is contemplated, such as a fish passage, major dam repairs, or a pumping system, right, there should be a comprehensive reevaluation of the decision-making process.
For me, major would mean is it's outside of a normal,
Yeah.
then
It's like green.
maintenance,
Yeah.
fixing something small, which normally would fit in our budget.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
The
So would
moment,
that like comment,
It's like
just
Yeah, the
for
moment-
Hobart,
the moment it would say
In other budget?
require a new budget line and stuff like that, capital improvements and so on, that falls under major.
Okay,
But if I
Mhm.
look at other documents like this, that definition of major is very.
I think that
common.
it's really not defined, but I would say this is how Public Works would look at it.
Okay.
A major project is the moment we have to touch capital expenditures over and above what is in our
yeah.
standard.
If it's like standard industry practice, nomenclature,
Yeah.
I'm fine with major.
Yeah.
If it's not, then I would just ask that
Yeah.
major be defined.
Yeah.
And your
If we-
definition sounds fine.
If we wanted to
What-
do it in the context of the town's capital planning, we might use, there's a tier structure. So tier one capital is like replacing copiers and things like that is pretty normal. It's in the operating budget. Tier two or greater is borrowed funds.
Yep.
And so, we could say requiring borrowing or something would be a good trip point for the town to say that's a major project as opposed to,
Or you could footnote it, Mark, and just say at the
So I'm gonna
footnote
make a footnote.
yeah,
about, this, we're
for
talking about
people
tier one or
buying
yeah.
borrowing.
tier two.
There you go.
Wasn't
So,
this, with this?
where does, if the dam reclassification, what does that fall under?
That would,
Because we haven't talked about that anywhere, but it's one of the
Okay.
things that we wanted to do. That was part of, is reclassifying the dam to save money.
yeah.
Whether the dam comes down or the dam stays, for now. I think that's something that
It's less.
should be
maintenance for
looked into, and so
years.
that you're inspecting the dam every 10 years instead of every 5 years.
I think there's not so many money savings between 5 and 10 years inspections, to be honest. This is more kind of,
But it's
what
also,
kind of classification the town wants to have to dams respect to where all this fits in emergency scenarios.
well, but it does
Yeah.
reclassify it to a low level, a low hazard dam versus a higher level.
Yeah, but again, it's. If we have the review costs every 5 years or every 10 years, this is not a major cost savings. as
That's not
such.
what we
I
heard from.
don't know, we had discussed that, but I guess that would be part of what this group does,
That's-
Yeah.
but I'm
that's-
asking the
But the dam
question
is under,
because
the
of the
dam
cost
falls under
involved.
Public Works. So how in the end, engineering wise, this is touched, that needs to fall under Public Works Commission.
So,
So then that would be a recommendation.
I don't
we
think
would- or
we're-
a discussion that we would have with them.
Yeah,
I don't think we don't mention this in the document. I don't think it's named as a major trigger, right?
No, it's just really more thinking about is this a major dam repair or is this where did it fall
It would-
financially? But if it's a discussion with
No, that's not even a repair.
CPW, then that's fine.
Yeah.
Repair,
Yeah.
the change, right, the change.
Changing the
The
classification.
classification is not a
Not a
repair,
repair.
it's a designation by
That's
the
true.
state.
You just need to reply to
That's a-
something.
okay.
Something.
Yeah.
But it allows.
But it's money spent and
Expenditure
applying, but,
expenditure.
Yeah, but that's coming out of tier one.
okay.
Right.
Yeah,
Out of
and I
the
think I
CPW
think we should,
budget.
I think we should press forward, but just,
Yeah.
And that we have to see.
I mean, the.
All right, I
the
just.
question there
Raise
is,
it, sorry
yeah,
to create a,
no worries.
Tangent.
Liz, you had a comment here that you thought that we should remove, that you felt like, damn, if.
So I
Yeah.
think I took away a different thing that everyone else did, and since everyone else seemed to not have taken this away about, I came away from the last meeting thinking that if there was some sort of major dam problem,
Mhm.
that was sort of like we should probably get rid of the dam.
No.
But I think I'm the only one who had that comment, so I think
No, I would second that.
but,
Yeah.
But that's the
But that
nature.
would be
That's the
triggered
main
anyway.
dam repair.
but yeah, so that's triggered it, it's, yeah, I think I was very tired when I was writing my comments, so. If ever, yeah, if there's, yeah, a discussion, there's a discussion.
Yeah, it would be.
But it doesn't trigger it.
But it's an option, yeah, not a given.
Yeah, that's fine.
Right, okay, so right now it's a
The-
trigger for decision making.
Yeah, that's right, great.
Okay. None of this really changed. This is all pretty consistent
Except
from
the
the draft.
watershed management committees comes up.
Oh, here we go again.
Oh, baby. All right.
Yeah.
Management. She wants watershed gone, not
Totally wrong
management.
word was deleted.
Oh, oops, yeah, you're right.
It's in the,
Pretty soon it's just a
on the
watershed.
third line of the paragraph
Said you
below.
were that.
Right? Yeah, Warner's Pond.
All right,
Toby in the top,
yeah.
water pond management.
Perhaps you do a search and replace.
Yeah.
That's all.
All right,
That's the better way to do it.
okay,
Don't rely on us.
So,
no changes
Give
here.
so on,
Cupcake.
on,
Yeah, you wanna
on
pause
the-
it? Pause it?
yeah, on the cost, I know we had it up there, but
Yeah.
just for curiosity and for clarification of the wording here and probably at the other point it's
Yeah.
referring to. So the CPA funding has been appropriated for dredging the pond. Is there a point? And then other improvements could be applied for, or is it dredging for the pond and other improvements? So what was approved at the CPA? And can the management plan be used for it, or do you have to does the group have to go back to the CPA, get it reapproved and to go through town meeting?
I
So there
don't,
were three
go ahead.
appropriations, two were for solely for dredging, and the third one was for dredging and restoration. And I think that there would need to be a conversation with CPC to understand, restoration's quite broad. And whether they would accept future activities under that, or if there would need to be, a new
Just down at
application.
least for the first two, they
First
might
two, I
need
think.
to,
Would either have to be reallocated at town meeting,
yeah.
or they go back to CPC into their funds.
Is the
So that would be a
language correct
conversation.
here? That it says CPA
Yeah.
funding that has been appropriated for dredging and restoration.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Because
But then it's like other. I'm just not sure what you wanna say,
You're saying
but other
recent,
improvements
right.
could be applied for, grant for, to pay for. Does it?
restoration of the pond. and-
Oh, so
These are
you
new
want a
sentences.
separate
it's
sentence?
too much, yeah, too much.
It's confusing,
Yeah.
just,
Yeah.
So it should stop after the word pond.
New sentence, other improvements.
for dredging the pond, period.
Right,
Right.
other improvements.
Funding for.
Yep.
Right.
Funding for
Funding
other
for,
improvements could be applied
You got
for,
Yeah, or maybe applying for.
yeah,
Right.
maybe. Just,
Yeah, the line over there has to do with capital and operating, so. One could probably mount a CPA application for designing a program like this and some of the startup expenses, but the actual. Now we're gonna go out there and sample the water every year kind of thing, it's gonna have to find its way into a budget, so. That'll,
I'm just saying, I'm confused why I made these edits. As noted above, CPA funding has been appropriated for dredging and restoration of the pond. Funding for other improvements could be applied for and granted to help pay for pond management in the name of recreation enhancement. That's what I
Yeah.
wanted to say.
It's fine.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, let's,
So I don't know if this makes a difference, but the dredging funding did include recreational improvements at the boat launch. I mean, they were limited recreational improvements, and
Mhm.
there's a distinction between CPA funding that has been applied for and then future potential funds makes it almost sound like there hasn't been a consideration of recreation.
Oh, I see.
And that's.
Yeah.
It's been part of the project all along.
Was that in all three or in one of the three?
I'd have to check. I mean, I think you could say limited dredging, restoration and limited recreational improvements or
Okay.
something along
And
those
let's
lines.
include that, that is
Yeah, in the first part,
in the first
Yeah.
sentence.
yeah.
So then that
And
could be a
limited,
conversation that,
limited
that like
recreation.
the restoration,
Recreational
potentially, and some of the
improvement.
dredging that is allocated towards.
I mean, the enhancements for restoration at the time of the 2018 and 19 or 19 and 20,
Right,
applications were for the boat launch.
Right.
improvements.
that's right. So maybe we could, a portion of that could
Yeah.
be, or whatever.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
So I think we got the language. Okay, so one just note, we changed what's in the appendix to more, to basically just pull out the things that are in this proposal, and not duplicate them, because the way they were in, we were pulling from two proposals, and so some line items were duplicated, that's
Sure,
corrected, in the appendix. Okay, so moving on, there was a suggestion around ideas considered but not recommended. So Paul thought it'd be helpful for us to say just like what was wrong with dredging? What was wrong with, why didn't, or why not what's wrong with them, but why aren't we not recommending
Right,
those,
right.
right? And so we took Paul's language, massaged it a little bit, and that's what's in this section. It seemed to us like that's helpful, but if folks feel like these explanations are giving you heartburn, I think you obviously don't need it, right? But basically says dredging, had some high costs, based on the estimates received and uncertainty in funding. Members had different opinions about the ecological sustainability. Dredging, some members expressed uncertainties on the final outcome, right, and the potential impact on recreation and access and the irreversibility. And then also just naming some members were influenced by a determination that neither dam removal nor dredging appeared likely to attract overwhelming agreement, and but there was a strong divide both within the town, right, and the task force. So if someone has concerns about that, I think we can pause and edit it, but I'm looking around, folks seem okay. Do we have now the additional task force member perspectives and expectations, which we've spoken about? So just to say again, for those of you who would like to have a little more time to think it through, we're just saying very briefly, it's 2 sentences in here, in the text, that the task force acknowledges that there are different perspectives and expectations. Then we say for details, look at the appendix. The appendix then has all of the text that was in the original draft, plus all of the text that reflects the strong articulation of the dredging perspective as drafted before today. Right. Then we have acknowledgements. Okay. And then I'll just go briefly through this. There was a suggestion that maybe we draft a charge for the Warners Pond Management Committee. Our sense was that it's actually pretty clear in the recommendations. We'd mostly just be repeating that, so
Sure.
maybe unnecessary.
Okay,
But I think it's fine. I mean,
doesn't it?
yeah. We also, anyway, we have the committee charge here. It's the first appendix, just repeating what's on our website. We have the members. We have, then we move the task force process down here, to really just save space, but
Yeah.
keep it. There was some question around, what did we agree to or not? We just kept what's in the protocols, but I kind of added a little explanation in the appendix that whatever we come to, agreement we come to, we're just gonna share the actual results of what they were, right? So pause if anyone wants to talk about any of this, but this is all just describing what we did, who we consulted with. We got some additions to these bulleted lists. We, added that Keith presented to us as well. We had a US Army Corps representative added to that list. This is all kind of the same. We did not put in a summary of the community meetings. That was a request, but we did put a link to sort of where to locate the actual videos. We were just worried about opening up
Right.
how we characterize
Summarize.
what the summary says could be challenging to agree on. And then we just got our final deliberations. There's also a suggestion, maybe we put the survey results in the appendix. They're really long, so we didn't do that, but we thought we can say where they are, that they're on the website and tell people to go there.
Do we have a link to the website? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, so right now,
There's a-
we link to the Warner Pond website, right? Saying that the survey data is all there, right? I think I have a specific link for it yet, and wasn't just one.
The one thing about that is that when task force, this is just how it normally is. Once they're sort of done their work, the webpage doesn't stay live.
Mhm.
So I haven't thought about this at all, but it might be better to link it to the Warner's Pond page, because all of that information can be placed on the Warner's Pond.
Okay.
page.
Okay, so we'll say that it's on the Warner's Pond page. Okay, we'll change all of the references. Okay, right.
David,
Yeah.
I want to ask for stuff that's really print, I understand with video. What does it matter if we have a gigantic appendix and everything is there in the document? Again, I'm thinking about posterity, but future coming back to it, and I myself have experienced in town things with links that, anywhere. Things change, the links die. This is valuable info. What does it matter if our appendix is?
Actually, I agree with you, especially after what Delia just said.
But it's
You
gonna
know,
be a
that
thousand
the
pages.
Morris Pond Task Force website will no longer be active. Even though you could link it to Warner's Pond.
Space. Ridiculous.
It's not a bad idea to have everything attached to,
One thing that we could do, right?
I mean, it's not like you have to present all that, but it's in one place.
So then if we feel that every document we have right now in the task force is getting lost,
Well,
putting that into the appendix to Vicky's point, we're getting to
Yeah.
1,000 page.
All right, well,
Maybe.
I
well,
thought we were just talking about the survey results.
No, that would be, then we have the same concern of every
right.
piece of information,
yeah.
not just that.
Is that possible,
Just
Delia, to
leave it
put
as-
everything on the Warner's Pond site then? I mean, all the documents that we looked at and talked about.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of those are, and I think, all the relevant information, I think, could be conveyed over. The things like the meeting slides and, things where, like, we have all the minutes or the recordings, we probably wouldn't transfer those are on Minuteman. Is that, would be somewhere else. We also keep a hard copy of all the information.
And all the
So like
reports
the
that we looked
Coventry
at.
survey, I mean, I think that was interesting. Would
Very.
Put it on, I don't know, I'd have to look at, the website to see. We
The
don't
town must have
wanna-
an archive.
Yeah,
So
we could figure something out.
Yeah,
I think if
because-
we assume that this recommendation is going to be adopted, then there's going to be a Warner's Pond Management Committee, which is the logical place for
All of
this kind of
Oh,
stuff.
yeah.
to land anyway. So,
Could you rename it then?
yeah, I mean, over the 5-year timeframe that, where this plan is in place, it can be pretty sure that this is gonna remain alive.
Right, the different
Discussion.
format.
What happens beyond that is.
That's encouraging.
Yeah. it
Yeah,
is.
that's true.
So then we just.
No, it was just starting to sound a little hinky with like, all right, where.
Yeah,
put it and
no,
stuff.
I
I
think-
do want people to get at it.
Yeah, that's good.
I think that it's,
However we do
by doing what we're doing, we're sort of saying, keep it in one place and keep it alive.
Right, right.
We've,
That would be very good.
and we only kept the public comment spreadsheet available internally, and would that be?
There's links to them, to write-ups of them online that people can download. That came out recently every week, I think, or every month.
It's on the
But
website, Jeff.
It hasn't been updated.
Yeah.
It was updated as of, just as of,
Oh, it
June
did?
6th, I think.
I mean, I think it might make sense to, separately pull all of those into one thing. For one thing, the way people are using large language models and things like that now. If that was all pulled into a document, it doesn't have to be part of this document, but then somebody could pretty easily go through and mine that for whatever they wanted to in the future.
I did that myself a couple months ago, Mark, just to
Yeah.
wrap my heads around it and
Yeah.
in addition to reading them all. That was really helpful.
Yeah.
It was quick.
The,
I let.
So I just I wanna move us forward here. It sounds like we're okay, kind of trusting that this material is gonna stay available online.
Yes.
Right? It sounds like if for whatever reason that's not the case, we would want some kind of supplemental appendix
Right.
developed.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
But it seems like the expectation is that will not be. Right? I don't know if we need to change anything in this language, but,
It'll have its own webpage, I'm pretty sure, yeah.
okay. So just continuing through the documents, we have, an appendix here with the costs that was updated. Okay, we then added, proposal number 1. Paul did suggest that let's just include that full proposal since it relates to last week's vote. So we went ahead and pasted it in here.
Okay.
Okay. And then continuing down, now the new last appendix, okay, is now this additional task force member perspectives and expectations. Okay, which is exactly what we spoke about. I do want to just highlight 2 tweaks that we could decide to accept or not. I think these were kind of on an assumption that this was in the body of the text. But when we were characterizing that some members are influenced by their expectation that the dam is likely to be removed at some point in the future, whether due to maintenance, safety issues, town decision-making, or other developments. So we took out legal because it was a concern there and we left it vague. I don't know if that feels more or less acceptable now. Right? Although they recognize that the timeline is highly uncertain and this may not take place for many decades or longer. Right?
To me.
That's how we handled that. And then we also just added some text here saying that, the the compromise around dredging the deep hole came up late in the task force deliberations and was not researched or discussed. Right? So just little clarifying language there that was suggested. And then it's the text that I read you out loud.
Mhm.
Okay, after this, okay. And that now is the end of the document.
Wow.
Okay.
Very copy.
So, is there anything else we need to discuss before taking a vote on this? Or that anyone wants to suggest that would be important for you in making the decision? An edit or recommendation? Okay. I'm gonna turn it over to my co-chairs here. So the way that we framed the kind of resolution in this text, okay, is it was here, where is it? The task force approves its final report as written. Right, which would be kind of the current draft that has been revised during this meeting. Okay,
So we would need, so you handle this, right? We'll need a motion from someone, not the chairs.
right, and I think we wanna just continue, right, we have this approach that we agreed. Right, with the options, right, so
Yeah.
let me just put those up on the screen. And so endorse or support, can live with, cannot live with, and abstain.
So somebody needs to
Make a motion.
make a motion.
I'll make that motion. That we
What's the motion?
adopt the report as
As written.
Discuss.
written. and-
Somebody has to
I
second.
second.
Good.
Okay. All right. So then we will take a vote. Vicky Alani,
Endorse support.
Malcolm Bryant,
Cannot live with.
cannot live with.
Cannot.
Okay. Jeff Collins,
I wish it simply said no, but I cannot live with.
okay. Christine DeNaro, endorse support. Keith is not Keith Hannon is not on, right? Mark Howell,
Endorse.
Bill Kameza,
Endorse.
Liz Morrison Howe. Ken Linwood, David Owen,
Endorse, support.
Sven Weber.
Sorry. Yeah, I'm in the last vote.
Yes, yes.
Like.
We're all
We'll come back to you. Oh, it's your.
I still feel that the task force failed to give a long-term vision for the pond and the watershed. I think the bar can I live with? I can live with a lot in your life. Yeah, it's not, that's the end of the world, but
Right.
it is not an easy decision, and I would hate that all the work that was put in here is somewhere lost because links are missing. Documents are not there, because sooner or later the town will face a decision. And the decision might not be the most popular one. And I think that's clear. So for now, I can live with, because a lot of the stuff I brought forward is somehow moved in. But I earmark it with what I just said.
Understand that. Understand that.
Okay,
Is that it?
All right,
that's it.
so just to, my count was 5 endorse, 2 can live with, 2 cannot live with.
Okay.
So just to name, we did meet our goal of at least 75% members. Although we understand there are very different feelings in the room about this
Absolutely.
outcome, so I think we also need to acknowledge that.
Yeah.
And clarifying as part of the vote that we had people who started who didn't vote today, so just to
Yeah,
clarify.
so the full, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, so we'll have Keith's vote, and we'll note that he was not here today.
And Paul Bohm didn't
No, he
vote.
can't.
Yeah, yeah.
Because he didn't, I just wanna make sure on record, we know why those
Yeah.
people aren't here.
Yeah,
today.
yeah, and we unfortunately, we can't do a proxy vote.
No, no, that's
Right,
okay.
yeah.
I don't mean that. I just want as our record to say why we started with a certain number.
Yeah,
Ended with a different number.
yeah. So I think, first of all, we have completed the substantive work of our task force, and I just wanna say, like, we should go to the public. I don't know what order to do this, but I also think we should say something kind of before we leave. I think it's really my chairs who should maybe take that on, but I wanna just thank, as a facilitator, the enormous work that this group has put in. This was really hard. This is not an easy issue, right? And I know we've had ups and downs, but I deeply respect the work, the integrity, the dedication that all of you put in here. So it really, I think, has been a challenge, right, given the issues, but also I've seen perseverance, and it's been a privilege as well. So, yeah.
Bruce, do you want to say something?
Yeah, sure.
Down the shirts.
Yeah.
Then I'll say something too.
I would really just like to thank everybody on the task force that that put so much time and effort and energy and really a full commitment to accomplish what I think is a very important task for the town. I was honored to be selected as one of the co-chairs. I did my best to help this task force arrive at a conclusion that feels right for the town. And it was a pleasure to work with Bill, my co-chair. I appreciate that.
Same here.
That's it.
That's it. Well,
Short
again,
and sweet.
again, Chris, thank you. And I have certainly enjoyed working with you. We've it's been a very close relationship. Hey, I got a call from Chris, was it 6 o'clock this morning and what? I think I was talking to somebody else at 10:30 last night. I mean, it's been unbelievable. In fact, I do want to say what everyone else has said. I want to address the staff and the facilitators and the members of the committee. I thought about this coming over and I thought anybody, who's part of this for the past year and a half, who's not experienced fatigue, frustration, embarrassment, disappointment, regret, and anger, I'd say you just didn't work hard enough because it's been there for all of us. And of course, we've also experienced camaraderie and humor and hopefulness and insight and growth. And I have to say empathy too. I mean, we understand our positions. I know that I did, and I want to thank you. I don't agree with always with people. We don't all agree with each other. But I can say this, there's not one among you whom I do not respect. And I must say, and this is going pretty far, there's not one among you who I wouldn't serve on a committee with again.
We will.
Because, one of the things that was very clear to me is that everyone, even our positions could be diametrically opposed. We entered into it with a pure heart. You believed what you're doing was right, and you pushed hard for that. And I just want to say I feel honored to have served with you. So thank you, all of you. That's it. So should we open it up to the public?
We just also briefly just thank our co-chairs for,
Yes.
Cupcakes for the co-chairs. So, all right, we can open it to the public. You better say nice things about us or I'm not giving you any time.
Public.
Yeah, you're the public.
Really, I just want to echo what I just heard, because I think
Name and
that,
address for the record.
what's that?
Name and address for the record.
I'm Denise Gilbert. I live at Concord Green in Concord. And I want to echo what I heard, which is gratitude. Because I've been here a few times and I've watched all of you, and tremendous respect for what I've heard and for the different points of view. I've been here to learn, because a lot of people I know come over to me and say, what's going on? And I don't understand. And because I've been here, I have understood more. On a happy note, I'll be transparent. There are many lenses in this room through which you are looking at this issue. And some are seeing it from the Department of Public Works and from resources and from ORS and from many important vantage points. I'll be transparent. I love Warner's Pond. And the first time I saw it 22 years ago, my jaw dropped because I saw that beauty in our town. So I'll end with this. There will be a view from Giroux of water in every light, benefiting all who gather there to walk, picnic, or simply rest. In Warner's, we can see the reflection of the sky. We can hear aquatic birds and take in the benefits of a view that makes one aware that there is more in this world than we know. It is worth the investment, in my opinion, without a doubt, to save Warner's Pond for now. And I and so many in our community say thank you to you and the community for overseeing and maintaining its beauty as we go forward. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone online who wants to speak?
So apparently there were issues with getting online. I just, from people saying there was an AI screen and then they logged on and the meeting was over. And they were asking, is the meeting?
Or is there anybody else?
Anna Thursday.
Yeah, there's definitely people online.
No, but no one has no hands raised?
I've been on the whole time, so.
Yeah, that's funny.
No
I
hands
don't see
raised?
any hands raised. Malcolm had his hand raised earlier, so I think that function is working, but I don't see any hands raised.
Okay.
Well. The meeting's.
Come on.
So yes, you can say.
No, I don't want to say it. I don't want to say it.
The meeting is adjourned at 8:59.
Oh my God,